Welcome, everybody. I'm Caroline O'Donnell. I'm the chair of the Department of Architecture at Cornell University. I'm the Edgar A. Tafel Professor of Architecture. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening or this morning, wherever you are. Good morning, Beijing, Jiao Shanghao, and good evening, Ithaca. The Preston H. Thomas Memorial Symposium explores areas of knowledge related to architecture and brings outstanding speakers together whose presence, thoughts, and expertise enriches and inspires our work. The series is made possible by a generous gift to the college from Mr. and Mrs. Leonard Thomas of Auburn, New York, in memory of their son, Preston H. Thomas. So thank you so much to the Thomas family for this evening and tomorrow's events. So much work has been done on the city and countless books have been written about it. And then in the early 2000s, Rem Koolhaas himself told us, now that I've told you all to look at the city, the XL, forget the city. It's the rural that we're interested in now. He said of his Countryside, the Future project, I quote, "The central thesis is that our current form of urban life has necessitated the organization, abstraction, and automation of the countryside at an unprecedented scale. Data storage, fulfillment centers, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, robotic automation, economic innovation, worker migration, and private purchase of land for ecological preservation are in many cases more actively explored and experimented within the countryside rather than the city. And so now the countryside was given attention too. But these binaries missed something important. The zone of flux and dynamism between these two realms is a problem unto itself. And so the fringe is described using terms like ambiguous or patchy or neither nor, but it's not an easily describable entity. It's a collision zone between the city's material and technological evolution and the cultural and spatial practices of the non-city. So tonight and tomorrow, with conversations taking place both in Ithaca and in Beijing, which serves to situate the conversation in or close to context, we will collectively give attention to this hinterland. Thank you so much to Professor Leslie Locke and fellow Hansi Wang for their insight and thoughtfulness in bringing us all together to address this emerging condition. And thank you to tonight's keynote speakers, Lu Wenyu and Wang Xu from Amateur Studio. We're so grateful to you for joining us tonight. And to introduce our guests more fully and the topic more deeply, I welcome and thank the incredible curator and mastermind of this event, Leslie Locke, Professor Leslie Locke.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for the kind and thoughtful introduction. Good evening and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the opening panel of this Preston Thomas Symposium called FRINGE, New Centers for Architecture and Urbanism. Some of you may wonder, what is fringe? Why is it relevant? And especially given that by its very linguistic definition of fringes, I quote, not part of the mainstream, unconventional, peripheral, or even extreme, end quote. The symposium argues that the fringe, an ambiguous and ubiquitous patchwork of zones that form a wide range of territorial landscapes, can be characterized as neither distinctively urban nor distinctive rural. It is central to today's discourse in architecture and urbanism, driven by the narratives of unrelenting and perpetual urbanization. The fringe constitutes the global engine for rural transformation and urban growth, a site for extractive industries, a territory for agricultural and technological production, and a continuous land supply for architectural development and the expansion of urbanites. Emerging as the predominant context and for current and future urban development, the fringe embodies contradicting adjacencies that are situated outside the preconceived binaries of urban versus rural, natural versus man-made, or rural versus connected. Several theorists have taken note of this emergent ambiguous territory, such as urban researcher Terry McGee, who conceptualized the notion of desa kota in 1990. The term is derived from the Bahasa Indonesian desa, meaning village, and kota, meaning city. Desa kotas are transformed areas that blend the rural and the urban, particularly in Asia, found in the peripheries of urban agglomerations. This typological urban fringe mix constitutes an open territory which enables a wide variety of land usages and triggers broad invention. Redefining architectural agency across scales, fringe innovations range from the state-of-the-art and adaptive material usage and construction to the development of atypical spatial morphologies and program. Formerly understood as peripheral, these multivalent rural-urban zones constitute new conceptual centers for architecture and urbanism. Containing some of the world's most intensely altered rural urban contexts, East and Southeast Asia provides a fertile seedbed for research on global fringe architecture and urbanism. In this symposium, bringing together innovative design and research through the lens of the built environment, the symposium questions: how do the material and technological changes brought about by urbanization collide with the spatial, cultural, and social practices of the rural? How do such meetings create or alter the spatial conditions of agency and interconnection, from the digital to the traditional, from the informal to the infrastructural, within the rural-urban context? To explore these questions, the symposium is organized into 3 thematized panels across 2 locations in Ithaca and Beijing. The first panel will look at around the theme of rural iterations. The second panel will look at technological rural-urban, and the third panel, experimental rural-urban. Over the course of 2 days, 12 designers, researchers, and educators convene to share their iterative work in the rural areas, expressed through technologically informed design approaches, hybrid construction systems, and build projects for the fringe. In parallel to the symposium, their works are highlighted in an accompanying exhibition in the Bliblowitz Gallery at the Milstein Hall that offers a dive into an expansive range of projects across geographical and cultural contexts. Together, the panels and exhibition aim to unpack the fringe spatial, ecological, and technological capacities to reveal innovative architectural and urban design strategies that strive to be more environmentally conscious, socially equitable, and architecturally adaptive. In tomorrow's first panel, Technological Rural-Urban at 2 p.m. EST New York time, the panel looks at both the changing building traditions and provocative speculations of rural-urban futures, particularly on how technology can help to reveal moments of transition and hybridity between the rural and the urban. Working with multiple scale approaches, the speakers' research projects trace and intervene in the technological, economical, and spatial infrastructure that have blurred the boundaries between the urban centers and the rural hinterlands. Tomorrow's second panel, Experimental Rural-Urban at 4:25 p.m. New York time, will look at the innovative projects and histories within the fringe that are both rooted in local material practices and highly experimental approaches. The speakers' works demonstrate that the rural areas is not stagnant or confined by tradition, but a rich, resilient, and potent space for innovation. Today's panel, Rural Iterations, will look specifically at recent works that iterate upon China's rural territories. where the Oxford English Dictionary defines reiteration as an act of repetition, in architecture, to iterate and to reiterate is to work in a cyclical methodology, prototyping, testing, and analyzing to refine a product or process. Through the work of the speakers, we gain an understanding of the speed, scale, and context of China's rural transformation, as well as how practitioners can work with local communities, craftsperson, manufacturers, government agencies, and outside expert on technology to reiterate material and cultural practices for new architectural methods. In these projects, the rural is reclaimed as a repository of architectural materials and methods, which had been gradually lost during urbanization, and reiterated to produce new architecture that is nonetheless highly contextualized and connected to the local cultural and material practices. Sometimes this reclamation is literal, repurposing material and site, sometimes methodological, and sometimes programmatic. And finally, I would like to thank the Thomas family for the generous funding support for the Preston H. Memorial Lecture Series, without which this event would not be possible. I would also like to thank the following individuals and groups whose support has been paramount in realizing the symposium. Thank you to Dean Yoon and the Center for Cities for supporting my research in this area. Thank you to our department chair, Caroline O'Donnell, for her continued guidance and leadership. The Cornell China Center team and Director Ying Hua for co-hosting and moderating today's event in Beijing. The AAP communications team and IT team support for this event and exhibition. A special thanks goes to our incredible exhibition team, consisting of current students and alumni, Sophie Chang, Jialan Hunter Huang, Cynthia Ko, and Yichen Jia. And most importantly, I would like to thank our design teaching fellow Hanzi Wang for her extraordinary support and invaluable input in organizing this event. Thank you, Hanzi. Finally, I would like to introduce Ying Hua, Professor Ying Hua, who will be moderating in our panel today and also serve as a co-host of our event today in Beijing. Professor Hua Ying is an associate professor in the Department of Human-Centered Design and the director of Cornell China Center. As the director of the center, Ying provides academic and programmatic direction for the center, for it to serve as a bridge between Cornell and China. She's a faculty fellow of the Cornell's Atkinson Center for Sustainability and the Cornell Institute for Healthy Futures. She also is a member of the China's Green Building Council. Ying will introduce our speakers, the panel's format, and schedule to get us started. Thank you, Ying.
Thanks, Leslie. At the China Center, we're very happy to work with the College of Architecture, Art, and Planning on this event. And actually, the China Center, the Cornell China Center, had the opportunity to support Professor Leslie Locke's work on the housing models for urban-rural connections in 2019 to 2021 through the China Innovation Grant at the center. So as I explained earlier about the language selection, I'm actually going to switch to Chinese for the first part of the symposium. 好，我现在自己给自己按一个钮，我就换成中文，因为今天呢，就是有两段，就是第一段呢是报告呢将是以中文来
and the keynote speech will be done in
那么第二
Chinese.
段呢是这个专题报告和
And the second will be the discussion that will be in English.
就是中文的。希望使用中文来听的这个观众，您可以在这个屏幕的下方选择这个
If you want to
那么
listen
记得要
to
关掉这个原声的这个频道，不然的话呢，可以听到
Chinese,
两
and
个
you
同时
should mute.
那我就赶紧进入正题啊。 刚才呢
Now let's go to the topic.
感谢了好多支持这个项目的这个
And Leslie has said thank you for many people who have supported us
再加
in
上
those
对我们这一
projects.
课非常非常重要的一个支持者。
And let me add one
中国就
thing.
是北京的这个专题呢是由那个易方达公益基金给了我们就是非
The
常
support here in Beijing is provided by Yifangda Funding, and thanks for their support. And not only today's activities, and they will help us to do a lot of communication and publication later on.
那好
I thank you so
我呢现在
much.
先来这个介绍这个主旨报告的这个2位嘉宾，其实可能大家已经
Let me introduce the keynote speakers.
这个正式的这个需要，我还是要来读一下这个王舒老师和陆文宇老师的这个简介。王舒老师呢，在
Let's take a brief look at
2012
Professor Wang
可持
Shu,
续的建筑和
and he won the Pritzker Architecture Prize in 2012. He believes very strongly in
他最近的一个
sustainable
项目呢，其实
architecture,
是说服这个杭州附近
and
村
his
庄的
latest
设
project
计不要拆除
involving
原有的住宅，
persuading a communist party
材料
secretary in the village
他和
near
陆文宇老师呢
Hangzhou
有
not to
一起
tear down the
在
dwellings,
杭州成立了
but
一
to
个建筑工
renovate
作室。
the
工作
original
室的名字
tiles
呢
and
是
the
参考了
bricks,
这个应用
and
建筑
he
师的工作
together
也就是说
with
基于自发
Wen
性
Yu
公益技能和
established
文化的
their studio in
王老
Hangzhou
师
in
是中国美术
1997.
院建筑学院的教授和院长。2011年，他成为哈佛大学设计研究生院
In
3
2011,
下剑3讲席客座教授的这个位置的获得的第一位中国教授。
he became the first Chinese council tender visiting professor at Harvard Graduate School of Design in Cambridge,
工业大学
Massachusetts.
学习建筑学，目前也
And
在中国
he
美
learned
术院建筑系
architecture in the
任
Nanjing
讲师。
University of
他获得了
Architecture.
2019年的
And he has
陶斯
many
特金奖，
titles.
并担任联合国教科文组织亚太地区文化遗产保护奖的评委。他曾经获得
And he is
德国
also
谢
the
里建筑奖、
juror
2016
of
年
this
威尼斯双年展荣誉
UNESCO
奖。他的工
cultural
作被列入英
heritage
国皇家建筑师学会2015年
projects.
研究基金项目。他与
So
王
you
舒老
could
师
see
共
that
同
they
创
have
立
done
了
extensive
建筑工作室
work in terms of
2022被授予
sustainability and how to bring rural
这个工作室呢
and
一直在
urban together. And their
承接这
amateur
个知识
studio
和整
has
合
been
改造材
very
料以及对
popular
原材
and
料
have been in
用
many
当下的景象，
projects
这就是传统
contributing
的理
to
解
the
实验性的这
contemporary
个建筑策略和
projects
深
by
入的这个科学
integrating
相结合的
tradition
方
and
式，
on-site
令我们工作室
materials
的这个
with very
这个
less
工作室的多件项目
environmental
的这个精华。
impact.
那么现在呢，我们就把下面的这个
Now we
40
have
分钟的这个
45 minutes
交给这个王舒老师
for
和
these
陆
two
文宇老
keynote
师。
speakers.
大家好，我是王树。
Good morning. I'm Wang Shu.
我给大家介绍一下我们近2年在
Let me introduce a
杭
little
州附
bit
近的农
about
村
the
的
work we have
工
been
作。
doing in the rural area near Hangzhou. I'm
刚
very
才
glad
中国
to
中
come
心搞
to
的这个
the
活动，
Cornell
我记得我还在
China
2016
Center
年
for this
去
discussion.
过康奈尔，
In
而且
2016,
在
I
那儿做了一
visited
个讲座。那
Cornell,
次的讲座是题目我还记得叫雨水絮语。当时
and
在
made
康奈尔
a
给我留下了这个很深的
had a very
这
good
个印象。
discussion with
也就
the
是那
fellows
次
there,
在
and
那边我
which
还去
impressed
参
me
观
a
了这个
lot.
Leslie 老师的
And
他们
that
的那
time,
个
I
机器建造
visited
的那个工作室，
this
印象也非
project
常的深刻，所以
from
非常
Leslie's
高
teacher.
兴今天能够再次
Therefore, I'm
大
very
家合
glad
作来参加这样的一个活动。
to come back together once more with Cornell. My
主
topic
要是围绕着我
today
们具体
is
的
about
在
the
浙江的
practice
农
in
村
Quzhou
做了
City,
一个
which
项
is
目。我
in
们过去大
Zhejiang
概
province.
从可能13年、14年开始，
Since 2014,
就在浙江南部的衢州
we have
我
the
们
works
做
in the
了
south, which is
若干
Quzhou
年的
City.
实践。在那个地方，我们
Here we have our practice.
做调研，完了
We've done a
当地
lot
的
of
政府也非常
research,
支持我们。
working
另外，我
together
们在
with
那
local
边开启了一个
governments.
教学的项目，当时是
We also
和
have a teaching
这个
project
中国的这个东南大学，还有美国的
and
MIT 一
opening
起在那里做了一
to
个研究
two
教学的
universities,
的一
one
个
from
实践项
US,
目。
one from China,
与
which
此
is
同
a
时
summer
就
program.
是我们业余建筑工作室也在那个地方进行调研，帮他们做乡村
And
规
my
划。
studio
最终
actually is
在
doing
那
this
里做成了一
investigation
个小
there,
项目。我今天就围绕
helping
这个项
helping
目
them to set up this project.
下一页。
Let me just center on this project.
这个就是衢州啊，可能很多
This is the city
美
of
国的同学没有
Quzhou.
概念啊。这个是在在浙江省的南部啊，
It's in the
衢州
south
一
of
个大概
Zhejiang province,
这种不到100万人口的小城市。
but less than
这
1
是个非常
million
典型，大
people.
家可以看到面貌，基本上已经是一个现代的了啊，但是
It
还
looks
是
quite
有一点点
modern.
传统的中国传统的建筑。远处
However,
可以看
still
到远处
have
有一个山的
some
黑色的影
traditional
子，我们的
architectures.
工作就是在
You
那
can
个
see the
山里。
silhouettes of the
下一张。
mountain, and that is where we work.
啊，这个就是衢州，现在实际上的面貌，也可以反映当
And
地
this
的
is
人
how it
对
looks
他们的
right
追求，
now.
他们希望他们的城市
And
变
people
成一
hope
个
that
完全
they can have
现
this
代的
modernized
国际化
city,
的这样的一个城市。这个城市
internationalized
发展的
city.
非常快。
And it develops very fast.
但是问题就在于这个
The question is,
所有的这种发展，大家都会有一点疑惑，就是这种城市化是不是
so we
这个
just
中
keep
国发展的
wondering,
唯一的一
is
个方向？
urbanization the only
我觉得这是一个
direction
问
of
题。
development?
一方面是你可以看到中国的传统文化几乎
You
都不
see
见了。
that
另外
the
一方面，这些
traditional
混凝土的这种
cultures
高楼大
are
厦，其实它都
disappearing,
是非常
replaced by
反
many
生态的，而
concrete
且是不可持续
buildings,
的。就这
which
种发展
are
看上去非常
not
的
sustainable.
让人震惊啊！但是它的问题我觉得还
It
是
kind
存
of
在。
shocks
这是浙江省
us.
的地图啊，大家会有一点概念。这个
You see from here the
上最
map
上
of
面是
Zhejiang
它的
province.
省会杭州我们
Hangzhou,
工
the
作室
capital,
包括
is
我
on the
们
very
教
top,
学的中国美术学院都在这个杭州。那最下面
and
这是
that's
衢
where
州
our amateur
这边
studio
我
is
们也标了一
situated.
个村庄
And
的名字叫石
Quzhou,
变。那么这个村庄就是我接
we
下来
marked
要
the
讲的
name
项目。
of the village. It's called Shibian.
下一张。这个项目我们是16年到，其实一直到去年才算
This
真正的做。
project
那么
started
衢
in
州刚才看到那个高
2016,
楼大厦的那个衢州的照片，
and we
下
just
面的那个
finished it
状态
last year.
其实它的下面就是全部是山区这是浙江的南部，
You
全部
could
都
see
是山区。
from the
我们
bottom of
就
the
是在山
square, the
区里
red
面
square, they're all
去做的这些
mountains.
一些调研，包括教学实践的工作。
And we did a
上面
lot of
我
research
标
and
了3个村子，
teaching
这是
in
我在
that
衢州活动
mountainous
的
area.
这样3个村子的区域一个叫做
And
温
we
源
worked
村，
mainly
一个
in
叫
those 3
阳康村，
villages.
那么中间这个叫石变村。这3个村子是我们做的工作最深入的3个村子。再朝下看，这个就是温源村，这是非常典型的
And this is
当
another
地的
village, one of the
传统
3
的中
villages.
国式的这个
So you see this traditional
你可以
Chinese
看到它的那
residential
个
building.
和自然特别的融合，不要那
It
么快
is
嘛。
in the nature,
它的材料是夯土的。下一张，
and it has this. It used the rammed earth
下一张。
as the building
这个是
material.
阳坑村，其实很多
And
房
this
子
is
都已经
another
是新房子，
village.
但是这个新房子
And
和
actually,
自然
those
很融合。
houses are pretty
下一张，
new. However, they are still parts of the nature.
下一张，这个就是我们要做的这个石变村。大家
So
可以
this
看到
is
是一个全新
Shibian
的一个村
village.
子。为什
It's
么是这个
a
样子？
brand
介绍一下。
new.
下一张。这个村子实际上是现在中国过去几年中国的这个扶贫计划的一部分，就是
This is a
住在
village
更高
where
的山里的这
this
个农村的人
poverty
把他从山上迁
alleviation
下来。
project is
所以这是一个
conducted, and people
迁下
just
来的一个相当于
relocated
是一个移民村。
from the
这个
mountain
村子可
into
以
this
看到这种
area.
红砖的做成这样的一个建筑，这是政府出钱给造的。
And these
这是
red
作为
brick
这个扶贫
buildings
的
were
这样的
built
一个
by
计
the
划的一部分。
government
但是政府呢不
as
完
part
全
of
出
their
钱，
poverty
政府把这个
alleviation
红砖状态
program.
的房子造好。中国管这个叫毛坯房，就是说它外面也
And
没
the
有装饰，
government
里面也
just
没有装饰。
funded
剩下
the
的这个装
basic
饰包
frame
括
of
这
this
种
house, say the red
把它继
bricks
续完
and
善，这个是要
everything
农民自
into
己
this
来
frame.
完成。
And
因为这些农民
however,
因为
this
当地其
interior
实是比较
needs
穷
to
的，
be
他们基本上是
funded
通过
by
去
the
城里
farmers
打工，每年挣了
themselves.
钱之后一点
And
一点
however,
地
those
上这个
farmers were quite poor when they got to this
下一张。
structure. So they had to go to the cities to work, to get some money and coming back
你
home
可以
to
看到那个实际上
complete the interior.
当地还有一种叫法，管这个叫裸村或者叫裸体房，就是它
And
因
they
为没有
also
外面
call
没
this
有
kind
装
of
饰
building naked
显得很
houses
破
because without
很
any
破烂没有很多。
decoration
其实农民对这
whatsoever,
个
only this
很有自卑
skeleton.
感就是因为他一看就知道这个地方
And
是
the
穷的
farmers don't
尽管他们
feel
已经算
good
是脱
about
贫了，
this, of
但他
course,
们还是
because of
穷的
its
所以
not
他们
good
非常
looking
有那种愿望，想
structures.
要
So they
下
really
去。但
want
是翻过来，你
to
又可以看到
improve their
这样的一个
condition.
村子的状态， 已经和这个地区原来的传统完全没有关系了。就它是新的房子，完全是
But you can see
更接
that
近
they
于城里
are
的工业化
new
的这样的
houses,
房子，
more related
完全
to
没
the
有任
ones
何
that
当
you
地
can
的材
see
料，
in
这是非常典
cities.
型的一个状态。
You cannot see the local
下一个。
materials or technologies in those constructions. Next
你可以
slide.
看到它的内部就是这个样
So
子，
inside the
政府
house,
花
you can
钱
see
造
the
完之后
view.
就是这个样子，
So
那需要他们
this
去
is
改
how
一
it
下。
looks.
下一个。
And the residents will need to decorate the interior. Next
你可以
slide.
看到他们的床啊，就是摆在
Now
这
you
个
can
房子里
see
面，
the
这是他们从
bed,
山上搬下来
the
的家具。
furniture. They actually brought
下一
all
张
the furniture
还有一
from
些
the
传统
old
的本地的
houses
家具，
on the mountain.
家
The
里头已经
furniture
生活已
looked
经开始
quite
了，窗
traditional,
户
and
窗
people
户只要有
start
的
to
这么一
live
张。
in the
它的屋
house.
顶
Even
很有
for
意思，
some
它的屋顶
houses, you don't
尽管
even
是
see the
已
window.
经是混凝土砖头的房子，
But
但他们
take
的
a
屋顶
look
还是用
at
的
the
木材，但这个木材它的做
ceiling
法
or
是
at the
比
roof.
传统的要更简单，
They
简单得
use
多。
wood,
所以通过这样的调研，你就知
and
道
it's
当地的
quite
人可能
simply
他还掌
designed.
握了什么样的建造的这种技术。
So I
因为
think
对
that
我们工作
probably
室
they
的工
master
作方式来
certain
说，这个
kinds
很
of
重要，因为我们最
skills
后
to
是要
build
依
the
靠当
roof.
地人
And this is
自己
important
来
for
建造。
us because we would
下一张。
want to use the scale, the local
你
scale
通过这张
to
照片，你可以
build
看到这个房
the
子是这个
houses.
村子是一个山地的村子，
So
后
from
面这个
this
村的这个后
picture,
面
you
这
can
个一
see
层的地面看过
that
来，
the
你会看到
houses are actually on the
这
mountain.
边的房子，它们之间有一个很
Now
大的
you
高
can
差。
see that there is a
下一
huge
张。
gap of height between different houses. Next slide.
当然也有些农民比
We do
较快地
have,
挣到一点
however,
钱，
some
所以他们
farmers
外
who
面的
manage
这
to
个房子
earn
还
some
是一
money
个红砖的
quickly.
那种状态，
So
里面就
despite
已
the
经
exterior
模
with the
仿
red
城里的人的方
bricks,
式开始进
you
行
can
装
see
修。
that in
尽管
terms
这个
of
装
the
修也还是比较
interior
简
of
单
the
的。
houses of those farmers,
下一
they
张。
already look like the houses in the city. Next slide.
这张图实际上是并不是这个村子的图啊，这
Now
张
this
图
picture
是
is
这个地
not
区
really
普遍的，
the
就
picture
是农
of
民大概
this
想象，
village,
或者说当地的这种
but this
基
picture
本上流行的这样一个
on
方式，
the
最后做
wall,
完
as
应
you
该是
can
这个样子。
see, is the
我们
kind
经
of
常开
look
玩笑说这叫做
that the
美国式大别
farmers
墅啊，就是农民
pursue.
的
They
心
say
里的
that
愿望，
they
实
look
际
like
上
the
就是这样的一
apartments
种
in the United
建筑，
States.
他们想象中的，其实是
So
对
it's
城里
something
面
in
的
their
别
imagination,
处的
the
区的模
kind
仿。
of
那么
city
我先
departments that they
介绍一
think
下，就
they
是我
can
们工
see
作
in
室
cities.
介入这个工作
So
之
next, I
后
want to
我们
talk
怎么工
about
作
what
的。
we have done for amateur
下一张。
architecture studio in that little area. Next slide.
这个村实际上并不复杂啊，它就是几
So
排房
for
子，
this
房子中
village, you
间
can
是
see
有
it's
一条
quite
溪水。你可以看到它每一
easy
栋房子实际
to
上都是两
view
户，就
with
有点像
only
是
a couple of
中国
rows
城
of
市里流行的这个
houses,
郊区房地产，这个叫
and
双
there's a
街
little
户数
river
啊，
in
就是两户
between.
是一栋。
Now you can see
那
that
么它这
two
个剩下的话，在
households
这
will
个水
live
的这
in
个
one
边上，
building,
靠
and then
叫右手
alongside
边
the
还有
river
一些
on the
平房，
right
这是原
side,
来
you
的一
will
些老
see
一点的房子留下来的
also some
单
old
层的平房，
houses
大概就是这样。
with
我们选
only
择这个村的话，目
one
的就是
story.
一个它
So
有
these are
特别
rather
迫切
for
的
the
一个需要
poor,
改善的一个愿
the
望，另外一个
poorer.
它非常典
So
型，
they live in
就
the
这样的村子
bungalows,
在这个地区非
and the
常多
structure
啊，就是我们
of
叫这种
such
裸体村也好，或
buildings
者说
are frequently seen in this area. We call
怎
them
么讲，就是
naked
这种
houses.
比较穷的状态
So
的
the
这种
houses
村落。
who are rather in a poor state without much decoration. Next slide.
那这个里面你就看，这是我们最后做
So
好的
in
那个
this
图啊。
slide, you can
做
see
这
this
做
is
好
the
这个图的
plan
话，我画了3个红五
of
星。
what we're
这
gonna
3个红
do
星什么意思呢？就是这
in the
个
village. And you can see
你
there
去
are
帮
a
他们做
couple
改
of
善，其实
stars
政府
in
也
the
会有一定
plan.
的资助。
Now,
但是
our
呢，并不是
project
每一
received
户农
financial
民都能
support
够
from the
一下子
government,
接受这个观念的。
but
这3
it
个
does
就是
not
跟他们
mean
反
that
复
our
讨论之
work
后，
will be
他们
supported
还
by
是
each
坚
and
持不
every
想改。
household.
就他们要自己
So
弄。
even
所以
after
我们的原
negotiations
则
with
就是
all
说，
the
他如果
people
不想
there,
改，
all the
那么我们就
residents, some
暂时不
still
改。所以这
do
3 户
not
就是我们
want
在做
to
的过程当中，一开始他们都有改。
receive the decoration done by us. So these ones and the stars are the ones who prefer not to decorate their houses. And this is the view, the plan, as you can see, after decoration done by us. Now, through our investigation, we know that it's a rainy place, it rains a lot. So you can see that after our project, we changed a little bit the surrounding of the houses. In rainy season, people would prefer to, for example, walk around in the little courtyard. Now, this is actually what they used to do, but the construction or the original structure of these little houses, these buildings, do not have, for example, the courtyards, which suit the original lifestyle of the residents there. So that's why we added a little bit more to suit the climate, to suit their lifestyle. Next slide. So as you can see, this is our strategy. So we do not change the structure greatly, including the roof. For some members in our team, they said that the roof just looked terrible. Why not remove it and let's do something new? And I disagree. And also we have to consider the costs. Once you remove the roof, you'll have to consider how to shelter against the rain in the rainy seasons. And you have to consider security as well. We want to maintain the security of the overall structure, and we have to make sure that costs will be low enough to suit the budget. So as you can see, that what we have been doing is not only to transform the house, but to improve the overall quality and functions there. So for example, we even design little pavilions, the little bridges to connect the village with other areas and the surrounding, so it will suit not only their everyday demand, but perhaps we can help the area for better development, for example, tourism. Next slide. So this slide shows to you, again, the details. As you can see, that the roof is quite deep into the house, and somehow it even forms a kind of stage with the house that is adjacent to it. So this is what we have been doing. We utilize the original structure of the house, and with this, we'll be able to receive the support of the house surrounding it. Next slide. More details of the sectional view. You can see again the details of the roof, what we have been doing to improve it. You can see that there are two layers of the roof on top of the original one. We added a new roof to guarantee the temperature inside. Next slide. And you can see on the roof there is a window because we want to reduce humidity inside for better ventilation. The materials, as you can see, we use plaster. And we also utilize rammed earth as well. And this is quite local. We use the local material. And for this slide, it shows to you the each and every step we use to build the building. And we ask actually the local residents, they know the traditional skills and they know a little bit the modern scale. So for example, once we introduce the bamboo technique to the residents, some said that they had no idea, even though this is an area that produces a huge amount of bamboo every year. But either way, after introduction in detail, the residents there learn how to use all the skills and to embed the skills into the construction. Next slide. Right. So this is a model, as you can see. This is how the village looks like after construction, after our project. And in between the houses, we add quite a lot of public area for better everyday life. We want to improve their quality of life. We add area spaces for public services, for example, bus station, because we know that after the transportation of this area is improved, a bus station is definitely in need. Next slide. This slide shows to you the original picture before the renovation. Next slide. Again, this is a picture. This is the plan that we use to help to persuade the residents so that they will see by themselves what they will get after the renovation. And again, this slide shows to you the pictures before renovation. And then you can also see the picture after the renovation, as you can see, with a huge roof utilizing bamboo, the plaster wall, the overhanging structure, the public space, bus station. Cars can also drive in. Now you can see that this again is a picture before renovation. Next slide. And after renovation. So you can see how it looks, generally speaking. Next slide. Now, when I was drawing the pictures, I myself was very curious about how it would look like. So now let's take a look at the real scenarios. Again, some pictures before the renovation, how it looked originally. Now, you don't even see quite a lot of water inside the little river, because the river is seasonal, and in raining season, there is a great deal of water in the river. And for this picture, it shows in which you will see that the two buildings inside were the demonstration projects, because we needed to use the demonstration project to teach the farmers, to teach the residents to learn the construction skills. This is to reduce the cost. And when it comes to the rather mega construction projects in cities, we used the same technique, actually. The slide shows to you how the village looked like in 2019. You can see the one in red. Now, actually, during the construction, a flood destroyed that house. Now you can see this was the result after the flood. You can see that everything had been destroyed and is quite dangerous. We even encountered mudslide. This is Wengyuan village. Now you can see stones in the river as a result of the mudslide, as a result of the flooding. So for traditional villages, I think people are very wise because they do have some of their own techniques to live with the environment. And you can see that after renovation, we changed the area that was destroyed by the flooding into a blanket space. So we don't use this area. And you can also see 3 houses who would prefer not to renovate their own buildings. Next slide.
So on this position where there were houses which were flooded away, you see these new houses are quite modern. There are some spaces in this village, this open air areas, and we established some public facilities for these villages. Before, there were some temples ancestral halls. However, they were all gone. So they want to establish some public space like this.
可以在这里聚会啊，
So people come here together, and this is like a small plaza.
下一张。这张照片很真实啊，就是你可以看到这些农民他们
You see from this photo, it's very clearly and how people gradually renovated their houses or their apartments. Some people had more money and some had only less. So you could see the contract between their apartments. However, this renovation process for these farmers has been just way too long. And this is the building after renovation. There was a problem in this village, is that most of the people work in the city, and except several old people and children, and this village is empty. And what we hope is that after this renovation, people would like to come back and to stay here more, and also attract the tourists. Many travelers, visitors may come here right now. Can work as like rural tourism. So this is a restaurant for visitors.
基本上我们没有动它但是我们把它的这个外墙跟我们新
And for this part, we only renovated the wall, exterior wall, playing it, and adding a little bit public space, and people can stop by and have a rest if they drive to this village. And those facilities are actually very important for rural tourism. People have this public space.
下面一张。那你可以看到这个他们的那种生活的状态的那种变化完了。
And you see, you could feel the changes. How people's life has been different. They have air conditioners here.
有兴趣的人可以观察一下那个细节，我们那个双层屋顶啊。
And you can take a look at the detail. You see there's a double layer roof, and there's a ventilation part. This is a very down to the earth, but you have to pay attention to the detail. This claying roof matches very well with the exterior wall. It can protect the wall very well.
这个就是他们的这种 山地的这种台地状态的这个空间
You see the spaces, buildings on the terraces.
你可以看到他们的这种生活在这个下面整个的状态发生了那种改变你们可以看一下
The big change about people's life. Pay attention to the technical detail. You see this double layer roof.
我们装的是那个防虫的网子
And we have this anti-insect mesh on the roof so that it can be well ventilated. It can also protect the roof from the insects. And we have very thin steel wire.
暴雨、大风这种天气所以你要考虑到所有的这种 气候条件
that is for strengthening these structures when the weather is windy, because in summertime the wind can be quite strong in this area.
这里还有一个细节，看那个窗户，窗户我们是在它原有的
And you also take a look at the
直接
window.
做了一个木头的一个折阳板这个实际上
And we have this
是中国
wooden
传统
like a shutter-board.
你看欧洲这种
And which is
做法
quite
很
traditional
它在
Chinese.
夏季很热
And
的
of
时候
course, you can also see
它把这个
this
折阳板
structure
就
in
是
Europe.
半打开
And
放
during
既能
summer,
够
when
保证
it is
屋子里的
really
隐
hot,
私
you
刚才我们前
open
面一张
that
照片
halfway,
那人家可以从
and you
后面
can
的
keep the
平台直接
privacy.
看到前面一排的屋子
And
里
also
去
you
是没
can
有
keep the
隐私
heat
通
away
过这个
from
东
the
西呢解
house.
决了隐私解决了这种折阳包括这种噪音就这个是个很简单的手法
And it can also
那么但是它
protect the house
改善
from
了
the
很多东
noise.
西
And so it has improved a lot.
有的遮阳窗上面还加了这个玻璃。
For some windows, we also have a layer of glass on that. So this is my presentation. And next we have Lu Wenyu, and she's going to talk about something similar and more about teaching. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wang.
现在我们邀请是继续主旨报告。
Let's continue the keynote speech.
我就多说两句啊。刚才王老师的PPT 也可能大家没太在意，就是写的是衢州实践。
The PPT from Professor Wang is about the practice in 衢州。
地区的实践，衢州这个地方，实际上平行我们做了3件事情。我等一下讲的是第2件。
In parallel, we have done 3 things. I would introduce the second thing we do here, which is about the teaching in this area. And we also invited about 20 architects to work there.
我们在这个衢州地区呢，其实还设计了一批小的，就是综合性的，带有这种公共使用功能的厕所。
And we
但后来
have built some public
那个是布点在城市当中的，每一个都很小，大概100平方米、几十平方米这样的一个规模。真正是最后建成的不多，所以这块内容我们今天就不讲。
And however, not many have been established, so I would skip that. And therefore, I would focus on this teaching and the practice in rural 衢州 from our studio.
在这个地区选择一个不同的乡村。
And this is a permanent program, actually.
的一些研究。
We chose a different sites each year, and so that students can come to practice. And we work together, we help the students to work on site. Even the students are still in school and they have their own projects, they can get their hands dirty. So this project has been on 4 years.
因为设计完了之后，它要实现需要有个深化的过程。所以2019年的学生的作品实现是正好2020年。
In 2019, so our design was done. However, because of a pandemic, we didn't have time to visualize this project. And so we have to take a look back at the one of which is more previous than the one in 2019. And so you have known that where 衢州is.
我们看一下这个2016年的这个村子是在叫赛东屋村。
In 2016,
2018年贺绍溪。
2017 and 2018, we were in these 3 villages to do the teaching.
就是大家都知道那个义乌
the one on the top
的发起人是他的这个创始人的这个老家。
is the hometown of the gentleman who initiated this 义乌 small commodity market.
这也是我们第一个项目选择这里的原因。我说这个名字很好听，让这里的村民做完之后也很。
We have a good name called
这是一个3校
The Source of Happiness for the project in 赛东屋 village in 2016. Invited students from the University, Southeast University of China, and the School of Architecture of MIT. And those are these tutors.
这是这个村子，就是一开始的时候，我们带学生，因为暑假的时候是所有的学生进驻到村子里，住在。
So all the students came to and stayed and lived in this village during the summertime.
比较仔细的调研工作，然后老师。
And that started with the investigation.
那么和村民一起讨论，一起商量，到底这个村子里。
And they discussed the project with the villagers. And to ask the villagers what they wanted to have in this village.
和研究和讨论之后来决定的。但是这个课程我们在一开始的时候给它设定了一些限定性的条件，比方说，
But there are some conditions
都是要基于这个
precondition of this project. That is, whatever technology or innovation you want to do, that must be based on the material, local material, and based on the local environment. So this material must come from the nature, and this is about our sustainability. It's not that you can take whatever material. You must use this natural material coming from the local place.
这个都是在这个调研过程当中，学生们拍的一些照片，你们去可以看
The
到。
students took a lot of photos
这个是
during
我
the
们和
investigation.
学生一起，很热哈，南方的这个
It was
时
quite
期
hot
所以
there.
就一起在调研，带着学生我们一起讨论。他们先提出一个设想，学生们就是分成好
And
多个组，我们
students
3个
made
学校是要求，
proposals,
就每一个小组里必须是有3个学校的学生混合的，不能
and
是一个
each
单独
group
的。所
consists
以
of
呢，每
students
个小
from
组提出
3
来，你们可能
universities,
想在这个村子里做什么，在哪个位
and
置。
each
那
group
么我
had
们
their own
和学生一
proposal
起，每一个
about
去跟他
what
们一
the
起讨论，
project
你这
is
个
like,
这个设计的这
on
个
which side you
项
would
目
like
这
to
个
put this
点的选位
project.
合不合适，做这样的一个内容
And then we
是不
would
是
discuss to see
可以
whether all
去
those
实
things
施。
are
这个呢，我觉
appropriate
得其实
or
是我
whether
们在
they
教学生，
can
因为
be
真实的工作也是
executed.
一样，你要对场
So
地
this is
景观，
very
你
much
要
like the
选址，
real
你要去
project.
决定你这个项目怎么去落地，
When
是在
students
完整的教
graduated
学生
and
一
they
个
started to
实践
work
项目
and
的
they
一个
had to
过
go
程。
through this process.
这个是他们在做这个材料的研究，就是我在这个村子，
And
你手
they
边
are
还有一些哪些的
researching,
材料呢？
studying the
这个村
material.
子山上就特别多的竹子，所以呢，这
So
是
there
是
are many
我们的学生
bamboos
和当地的
on
这
the
个村民
mountain.
和工匠一起，他们去讨论，在想这些东西是不是可以用来他们的设计当中。然后我们看一下现场是学生们是怎么工作的。这
Let's
个
take a
呢
look
是
at
村
how
村
they
里边
worked.
提供了一个他们的一个场所，因为他们的
They
场所
have
太
this
大了，可以用
place
来
for
这个
students to
就
do
这一个
research,
像他们的会
to
议室哈，
study.
我们可以所有的人集中在这里。
And this is only, say, like
然
meeting
后
room
有
for
中国的学
all
生、
the
美国的学
students
生，
to
因为工
gather.
程理工的学生是来自世界各个国家的，特别有意思。就是
And you
他
see
们
that the
是全部
students
都是在一
from
起工作。
different
那
backgrounds
么我们
and
会
students of
根据他们
MIT
的这个
come
过
from
程，
different
对他们
countries
就跟在
too.
学校里一样的，会对他们的设计进行一个评图的工作。
And later on, we
这
will
个是
do
学
the
生
assessment
当时
on
做的
their
一些
design.
整村的调研，看到那些
And
圆
those are the
圈是
schemes.
他们选的那些点位，就是我
And
们
the
刚
red
才说的
circles are the
调研
sites
的那些一起
selected
讨
by
论
the
的那些点。
students.
然后右上角就是学生在这个过程当中，他们设想的可
The
能
top
会
right,
在这个村里
those
做
are
一些什么
the
功能，这
are
个就是
potential
具体的功
projects
能
that
都是
can be
这么去讨
developed.
论出来的。这个是学生的一些设计理念，那他们就不同的组，有的组他说
And they
想
have
要做
different
一个
groups.
公共的卫生间，在中国的
Um,
乡村，因为
some
离
wants to build
很
this public
很远，就是一
toilet
般来说它不
place.
太会有一个公共性的东
In
西。这
the
个可
rural
能如
areas
果
in
去过
China,
乡村的
many
人知道，
toilets are
一
quite
般它
far
不会
away
再有一个公共厕所这样的一个东
from
西，因为
reach.
它都是
They
自
don't
己的
have
家
this
里，所以你如果
public
有外来的
or
人跑到那
bathroom
里，
toilet
没有
place.
办法解决这
So
个问
as
题。
an
所
outsider,
以
it's quite
学生
hard
就
for you
想，
to
那是不是
to
可
find
以
the
在这里
toilet.
设置这样的一个东西，接纳外来的人员？那么还有一个组呢，他们就准备想做一个临时
And
的
another
停车位，
group,
对这个地
and they
方，
want to
还有一
set
个
a parking
是
lot.
做一个村口的石碑，一个、两个、三个、四、5个组哈，还有一个提出来的是一个广场的公共活动室，还有一个景观桥。因为这个我们没有限定它一定要做什么，但是我们的目标是把它设计的东西最终实
So
现。
we hope
这
that
个
in
是
the
很
end,
重
we
要
will
的一
be
件
able
事
to
情。
achieve something different
这
from
个
the
是
original
学生的
design, the original
画的一
buildings.
些图，
This slide
我
shows
们
to
可以
you the
看一下
designs
他
of
们
the
在，这都
students.
是在现场画的。
They draw all the
所以学生
pictures
建
on
了一些模
site.
型，
Some of the models students
他们已
created,
经在开始研究利用这些
they
材料，
already
就是当地的一些材料，怎
started
么样去
analyzing
设想
how
这
to
个结构，
use
因为这
the
种需要
local
他们
materials
在讨论。
for the construction projects. More pictures, more drawings of the students. Again, some of the key joints of the design by the students. And we as teachers can see their progress step by step, which is just amazing. So once in a while, we would organize meetings with the students to help them to address some of the challenges that they encounter in the process of the designing and construction. And you can see on one side, those were the officials of the local government, because at the end of the day, we would want to fulfill their demand. And this is professor from MIT who also went to the village with us. Some simple models created by our students when they were living in the village. And there's one thing that is important, as mentioned by Professor Wang just now. That is, we would ask the students, together with the craftsmen on the site, to choose the materials and to experiment on the structure that they would use in the construction. Now, this picture, as you can see, the structure made with the local residents using bamboo. Now you can see that this is one designed by the student. The student was planning to build a movable restroom which could be placed in the forest. And I think that, well, even though the mock-up eventually was not really delivered, but it was just funny. It was just an interesting design. More pictures on collaboration with local residents, more models by the students created on the site. I think it's really interesting to see that the students would really love to work with local residents, the local craftsmen. A very important structure. At the end of the day, now the construction was finished exactly because of all the investigations, all the experiments that they conducted, which managed to solve all the technical details. This is a design of an important unit of the construction. This was still at the preliminary experimental stage. Picture of the student discussing with the residents, with the craftsmen there. A much bigger structure, as you can see. So they were thinking how to guarantee the stability of this structure. Oh, now it gets erect. So this is one unit. Now you can see a little bit the framework of the house. This is the roof. And how it looks like at the end. So at the entrance of the village, we create a building. The entrance of a village serves as an area of people talking with each other, communicating with each other every day. So people would hang out at the entrance. And on this slide, you can also see the restrooms and a little pool for laundry. So the entrance serves not only for people partying, but also bears some functions of laundering, for example. And for people outside of the village, they can also gather in here at the entrance with the people that they plan to meet. So this is a little bit special, unique to Chinese mountain villages. A closer view, as you can see. This was the first project approved that year because we actually organized a kind of competition. So at the end of the day, only one project Only one design could actually be constructed. But actually, we constructed two of the projects because the villagers like the design so much. This is the pool of laundry, as you can see. The construction was finished the second year. For your information, this is the second project I said, which the villagers like so much. So we also constructed this project. This is at the end of the village. This is a restroom, as you can see, with the bamboo structure. A picture of all of us, the students, the teachers, and the residents. And then in 2017, we also organized a similar project in Huangtankou village. But I will not dive into details due to time constraints. We have Mijing and Andong from MIT. I know that Andong is now working in Cornell, so we're very happy. Today we are here in the Cornell event. More pictures on the 2017 project. So we're inside. We were inside the village. You can see a picture of Andong, who would like to build a bridge. So that's why you can see on this slide, everybody's adjacent the river. More pictures. Discussions. I will be very quick just to save time. Not for this project, we had a different batch of students and professors, but the routine was exactly the same with the previous one. So more drawings of the students. The structure designed by the students. You can see the entire process of the designing. In the end, I will show you the pictures after construction, and you can see the breakdown of the structure, very detailed. As you can see, a very formal meeting with the students, the professors, the officials, local officials, and local residents. And more models by the students. We went back, as you can see, to our Hangzhou campus for detailed construction discussions, more experiments on the site. In terms of materials, in terms of techniques. All the structures were conducted by the students. They would use the materials that they could capture on the site, in the village. You can see that the students were doing everything themselves. Models. Again. Right, let's see how it looked like in the end. This is a model. Let's see how it looked like after completion. This is how it looked. It's a very interesting place. So in the daytime, it can serve as a market, a grocery market, where you can buy veggies, meat, and everything. And when it comes to some assemblies, for example, assemblies of meetings, etc., they could also use the area for the assembly of the residents. And at night, this place can also be used for showcasing films, for example. Thank you so much. That will be all. Thank you, professors. Well, that's really not enough. And I would like to thank all of you for the excellent sharing. I think we still have a couple of minutes for Q&As, probably 2 to 3 questions for our colleagues on the line. You can put your questions in the chat box. I would like to first invite Leslie for a question. I would like to thank all the professors, Professor Wang, Professor Lu, Thank you so much. I would like to thank you for joining today's event to support Cornell. Thank you so much. So here comes my question, which is quite short. So when designing the constructions in the urban-rural fringe, and in the process of constructing all the projects, how would you iterate? How did you use the technology of iteration to promote your work? And what was the role of iteration in your project? Thank you.
这个我来回答吧。
Thank you so much for the
其
question.
实我们在那个农村里头，碰
So
到的一个
in
问题就是，它
the
实际上
rural
是一个很
areas,
尴尬的，就当
we
地的农
found
村，
that it was a bit
传统的这套做
embarrassing
法基本上已经
area
结束
because
了。
the
但是这
traditional
种现代的
methods,
这种做法，
techniques
其实他
could
们
no
又了解
longer
得很初级、
be
很枯燥，
used. They
就
came
在
to
这
an
样的一个
end.
状态中，所以我们
But
去了之后，
the local
很
residents
重要
had
的一个
no
就是你
idea
要
about the
看到当
modern
地的
ways
这
of
个
construction, so it was a
比如
little
它
bit
的材料，
embarrassing
包括
for
他们
us.
实际上掌握的这
But
种
we do see
技
the
能。
potential
另
in
外一
terms
个的
of
话就是
materials, in
要
terms
把
of
一
what we
些实际
already
上
master in terms of
蛮
the
带有现
techniques.
代色彩的
And
工作方式带进去，比如像刚才我
what
们看到
we
的，
did actually
跟他
was
们讨论
to
用他们当地的材
input
料，
the
完了通
rather
过一种
modern,
新的想法，
the
通过实验的做
contemporary
法，其实你会发现
technologies,
其实他们
techniques,
能做，
and we
但是只不
conduct
过它这个
experiments
观念
there.
上面
So we found that
的
they
问
could
题，
do
然
it
后这个观念的逐渐的这种
following
改变，配合着
our
他们手上的做，
technologies,
越做他们就
but
越有信心了。
we should take it
有些结
gradually,
构他们从
right?
来没有见过，
Because it took
做
a
着
little
做着
bit
他们
time
就
for
想
them
起
to
和他们原
adapt.
来熟悉的某个东西的关
And
系
then
等等，
as they
就这样的一
proceeded,
个过
they
程。我觉
found
得
that,
是这种
certain technique that
技
we
术的迭代
told
这种
them
设
was
计的方
actually
法的迭
similar
代，
to the
一定要能
original,
够找
the
到和
traditional
当地的人
techniques.
他所熟悉的，比如他的材
So
料，
I
他
think that
的
the important thing is to
会
find
的会做事情的
the
方法等等，
joint
产生某
between
种
us
结
and
合点，
them.
这个特别重
And
要，
this
因为我
joint
们
is
最后的目的
important.
是要
We
把
have
它
to
变成
join
现实。
the modern
这个
with
就是
the
最
traditional
深
in
刻
order
的
to
一个体会。
output the result. Thank you.
谢谢王老师。
Thank you so much.
让我补充2句吗？
I would like to
可以
add
啊。
a little bit
陆老师，你
more.
来补充。
Professor Lu, please. Thank you
我
so
们在
much.
做这个乡村的这个过程当中，发
In
现
the
一个特别有
process
趣的事情。
of our
中国农
projects, we found
村
something
你知道
interesting.
是越来越
So
老
in
龄
rural
化，越来
China,
越
you know
人
that
少，
they
空心
got
化。
increasingly
但是我们因
connected
为暑假的时
with
候，
the
每
internet,
次去都是好几十个学生
but
啊，年
there
轻
were
的、
few
年
people
轻有
there,
活力的人
fewer
进入
and
到村
fewer.
子之后，
So
其
each
实
and
对这
every
个村
time,
子带来的
dozens
改
of
变是
our
非常大的。
energetic students
他们
entering
会
into the
反馈给我，就是
villages,
说陆老师啊，他们
they
太高
brought
兴了。他说他
huge
们整个的
changes.
暑期，这个
And the
地区
residents
增
were
加了
just
一道
so
亮丽的青
excited
春风景。
because, for
而
example,
且
in
因为我
summertime,
们每到一个村
they
子
could
都是
see
住
all
在
those young
村民哦不，
people
学生
with
是住在村民
huge
家里的
energy.
哈，他们不
And
是
you
住
know
在
that
住在什
the
么酒
students,
店
the
或者什么，
professor, the
就是每
students
一个学
particularly,
生
they
都
did
是
not
分
live
配
in the
在当地
hotel.
的村
They
民的
live
某一
in the
户里面，他们
houses,
是住在
in the
里面一起生活
households,
的。
together
是
with
特
the
别有意思，
residents.
但是等他们离
So
开
the
的时
local
候，实际
people
上
were
因为
really
这个过
excited
程
to see
对
all the
整个
students,
村
all the
子
young
发生了
people.
一些很根本性的
And
改变。
after they
比方说，
left,
他们
they
这个
left
村会变得
something
特别的干净，
significant.
然后他
For
的那个
example, the
有些
villages
生活
would
方式也会
become
发生改变，尤其是我
cleaner,
觉得思想
their
更是
lifestyles
发
were
生
also
了巨
changed,
大的
and
变
their
化。
thoughts,
所以
their
这个是
thinking
有
were
点
even
慢慢的
changed.
就是渗进
So I
去
thought
去改
somehow
变他
we
们，这个我觉得
permeated
特别的重要。
into the villages. I think that's important.
谢
Thank
谢
you.
陆老师。
Thank
陆
you.
老师
Thank you
讲
so
的特别好。
much.
谢谢。然后其实现在
Very
有问题
good.
进来，那个有一个问题，其实
So
就
we see
顺着
some
刚才陆老师
questions
讲
coming
的。
in.
他这个问题呢，就是说这个建成之后，请问后期这些
So
在农村建
after
造的公共空间是
finishing
由
those
谁以
projects,
及如何进行维护的？目前的这个
and
状
who's
况
going
是
to
怎
do
么
the
样？
maintenance? What about the status
因为
quo
这
of
个是
those
都是每一个
projects?
村民，就是每一个村子的村民自己在维护的。
So the
好
maintenance is
像
done by the
我
villagers
听到的消息，
themselves.
因为介入这个虽然做的很小哈，花的代价非常低，因为都是很便宜，都当地的材料、当地的工具。
And although
但
the
是不
cost
知道，因
gain
为现在
was
网
quite
络时代，
relatively
常常
low
会变
because we
成网
use the
红，
local
然
territorials.
从来都不知道的这个村子突然就火了。
And now, because of this
可能还挺
project,
好的，
some
就
of
是
the
我们每
villages
做的
have
那个
become
村子，
kind of
最后的
internet
后续啊，他们其
sensation,
实都还蛮
attracting
开心的，
visitors
因
to
为
go
对
there so
村
that they
民
can have
来
some
说是带
income.
来了真正的实际的利益了。
And this is
那
a
个陆
the
老师，
good
您好像
thing
能够预见
for
到
these
下面会是什么
villages.
样的问题，我就继续顺着您的这个
So okay, I will follow
刚
your
才引出
train
来的
of
这一点讲。
thoughts.
线上呢，现在有2个问题，都是跟这
And
个
there are
功
two
能转型或者
questions
是这个变化啊，就是
concerning
因为有新的这个
transformation
建筑进去之后，或者是新的这个
because of
不
this
同的态
new
度看待他们的
projects
空
or
间的这个进去
buildings
之后呢，所以2个问
are
题呢，
there, and they
就
have
直接读啊，
different
就是说
new spaces.
王老师、陆老师，我有一些功能转型这个方向的问题想请教。当就是当地如果是往民宿的功能这个转化的话，那么
If
当地
we
的原生生活模
focus
式是如
more
何，
on
是否
this,
能跟这个旅游这个
say,
要素相融合？那么乡村改造除了民宿，乡村旅游这
places
条
to
路还有
for
其他
visitors,
的
we
可
have
能吗？以及
accommodations,
农
we
民
have
对于就是当地的这个居民对
bed
于
and
这个旅游介
breakfast.
入之后是一个欢迎
And
的心
after
态吗？
this
还是比较抵
villages
触的一个状态？
are pitching into this
我先说
tourism.
吧。
Do
其
these
实我
villages
们带
like
着
this
学生
way?
做的这个几个村子，对这个村民的生活
In the
是
several
没有
villages,
特别就是去干扰他们的生活的，他们还是保持原样的，原
those
来的朴素
projects
的生活
didn't
还是朴素的生活。
interrupt
而且这2个村子
their
是不是开
old
民宿
style
我
life.
们没听说他们好像因为这个东西去开
And
了
we
民宿。
we
但是
haven't
正
heard
常的
about any
对外来
news
的人员的
about
接纳是肯定
establishing
是比
this
原来要好。
pleasant
但是刚才
breakfast
王老师讲
or
的那个，
accommodations
就是
for
我们
visitors.
工作室
However, they
改
are
造的
more
那个村
open
子，那确
to
实
new
是
visitors.
我们知道它有一部分的就是那个已经改成民宿的功能了，所以
However,
我
there
觉得
is
它应
one
该是一个
village,
多元
it
化的，
is
它不是
quite
一个完全的单一
relatively
的。那么
mature.
不管是
So
民
when
宿也
visitors
好，
go
或者
there
是
and they can
其
enjoy
他
the
的也好，
basic
对村民来说，
facilities.
它只要带来了实际的那个经济
So
效
for
益，我觉得
villages,
他们还是非
actually,
常
as long
坚
as
持和
they
欢
can
迎的。
have some
王老师
gains
你补充吗？
and they all have this open attitude towards these projects.
其实因为这个生活啊，它需要有一个时间的观察。刚才陆老师介绍的项目，因为做的都是小的公建啊，所以还不牵扯到民宿啊这类的。
And Professor Yu just introduced some
你像我
small
们前2
parts
年做的
of
另一
the
个项目，比如说
these
阜阳的文
projects.
村啊，就非常典型。
Save the project we
我
did
前
a
2
couple
天还
years
专门
ago.
回访过这个村子，那
文
个
村 in 惠阳。
那个住在那个当
I
时
just
村里算是一个
visited
青年积极
not
分子啊，就是他
long
知道
ago.
我们在改造这个村子，他从城里跑回来，他要来参与这个事情。
And the
然后
local
后来
people
他
there
还
are
变成
very
了我们培训的
enthusiastic about
施工过程
the
当中夯土和抹
potential
泥这一项，就是变
transformation.
成他在负责，他这个村里的村民嘛，所以他特别有那种
And
参与感
it
和
is
自豪感。
quite
完了，他又第一个
impressive that one of
把
the
他
young
的
people coming
他
from the
就是我
village
们
and
做
who
的这个
is
房
now
子啊，
taking the
他当
job
时
to
选中了
be
这个
in
房
charge
子，
of
我们
around
住
the
进去
earth and claying.
他用他学会的这种抹泥啊什么这些工艺，把他的房子里面全部自己又
And
改
they have
造了一
learned
遍，做成
these
了这个民宿。
techniques.
他和他的这个
And
老
these
婆2
young
人
people, I mentioned
特别
that
有幸福感的
who
在那里。
has
就那天我
renovated
们回
their
去的时候，
own
在他的小
home
院子里，我
into
们给
a
每一户
bed
设计一
and
个小天井，
breakfast
他们做大
within this
铁锅做
technique
这个围炉，
that is
围
learned
炉
from
这
the
个煮茶
process.
我们在那聊天。
We were
你可以
there
发现
and
像这
having a
种
good
都是
time
潜移默
inside
化
their
的
house.
对
So you
乡
could
村
see
生
that
活发生
those
了
things
真
are
的变
being
化。
imbued
因为比如
a
说
little
在
by
院子里生
little
活，很多
into
地
the
方在
village's
浙江农村已经
life.
消失了，这个文化已经消失了。但是我
Like
们把这个
people
小院子
used
做回去
to
之后，它
to
这个生
gather
活又
together
重新发
in
生
the
了。
open air,
这件事
not
儿
inside
我
the
非常有感
house,
触。
which was the tradition.
谢谢王
And
老师。
now we want
那
to
个
bring
现
this
场如果
tradition
有问题
back.
的话，大家也可以那个举手示意。然后我们现在有很多好的
So
问题，
any
所以我们可能
questions,
就
you
把
can
这个
raise
休
your
息的这个
hand.
时间挤压掉了。有一个
We
问题
would
呢，在
skip
众多的问题当中，我
the
发现有一个
break.
问题是我在康奈尔这个设计系的这个学生提的，所以我就开个后门给
I
他
have
们
a
问一下。
student asking
这个
this
问题呢是
question
关
who's
于这
from
个
Cornell
就是
University.
可能是跟可持续相关，然后跟建筑技术有
It
一
is
定的关系。
related to
是这样，业
sustainability.
余建筑工作室如何理解和看待村民自有的这
How
个
to
建筑智慧？
understand
特别是有没有关于
and
可持续那个课题的这个建
and
筑智慧？
see
那么
this
跟这个相关的
wisdoms
呢
from
是，
these
刚刚陆老师也
villages
提到，他们有
which
就
can be
是
contributed
看到一
to
种
our
不同的、从
projects
来没见
there.
过的这个建造方式。那么外来的这个技术
And
文
maybe
化
you
跟
when
他
you are
们之
there,
间
you
是怎
see
么样
there's
一
a
个互动？
different
自
traditional
有的跟这个外
architecture
来
or
的
building techniques from these villages can you integrate into the project?
我们因为村子是从2012年到现在，就是不同
since
在村子里实现
2012
其实是
till
很难的，
now,
所以每一个项目都
it's
花
not
了特别长
easy
的时
to
间。
accomplish those
但是我觉得
projects.
特别有意
Each
思的，
one
比方
has
说
taken a
那时候
very
做的
long
那个文
time.
村和村民
Interestingly,
去
is
讨
I take
论，
Wenchun
或者
for
是我们在做调
example.
研，
When we
那最后实
discussed
施的时
when
候
we
特别有趣的就是我们那
investigated
个
the
村子里的那个石器
situation,
墙是
and
当
we
地的
had a
村
lot
民，因为
of
他那个村子里住的
interaction
有
with the
就是专门的石
villages.
匠师傅，所以我们可以用这
And
个技术。然后刚才
we
王老
saw
师提
that
到
we
了其
have
中
a
的那个村民，他愿意
technique for
学
the
习，所以我们
walls.
教他夯土和抹泥。所以那个村子里的夯土和
And we
抹泥
also
也是那
taught
个
these
村子里的
villages
村民去
on
来
how
实
to be
现的。
good
那么
at
后来带着
around
学
the
生
earth
做的
and
这些，
playing.
其实他们不排斥，他们会技术，但是他们
And
不
the
是带着
villages
那种我们
had
想
this
要的，或者说什么东西
craftsmanship,
是更加
but they
从我们
didn't
的角度去
know
看，和他的角度不
of
太一样，因
what
为他们原来不会想那么多的空
is
间啊、
better
美
from
学
our
呀， 或
perspective
者是什
view.
么。但是呢，他们手
So
上
they
的
would
技术
like
是
to
没有问
learn.
题的，所以你教
They
他去
have the
做，他
technique,
可
they
以
have
把
the
你想要的那个东西
craftsmanship.
做得特别
As
好。
long as
所以
we
这个我觉得
teach
是我
and
们
they
这
can
些
do that
人积
very
累的一
well.
些经
So
验。
this is the thing that we have learned from
我觉得
interacting with these
陆老师
villages.
讲的特别好啊。但是那个我对这里面还有一点，比如说我们那时候在文村的时候，我就发现，就当
When
地
I
的
was
那
in
种
one of the villages
这个
called
农民啊，
Wenchun,
就是很多人其实都心灵手巧，就是工匠，
those
尤其他那
locals
个地
are
方的
very
石匠，我
crafty,
印象很深，就是他们的
especially
房子
the
外面
stonemasons.
的鸡窝猪圈都搭得特别好。
For example, they have
新
this
造的自己的房
beautiful
子反而很
places
丑，
for these
就是他们想
chickens, for
模
their
仿城里人，
pigs.
完了之后呢，就
However,
对
when it
自己
comes to the
会的
house
那
they
种
live
材
in,
料和技
which
艺
is
其
not
实是
that
不太
good
的，就
because
仿
they
佛
want
这个东
to
西不是
copy
城里的
the
东西，所以
houses
他们要
in the
模仿城里，
city.
模仿了
And
不
so
同
they
的
want
笨拙和拙劣 但是他翻
however,
过来，
they're
他
not good at
房子旁边的
copying.
鸡窝猪圈用石头搭
And
的
in
那个
contrast, you
工
see
艺
their
精湛啊，我经常
stone
说，我说这都
built
是大师杰作
this
所以你需要跟他
chicken
们交流之
houses,
后，让他
which are
们意识
really
到，
good.
其实他们自己会的这个东西特别好，他要有这样
And
一
after
个认识。
teaching them,
另
so
外一个
these
还要说服
villages came to
村里面，因为
realization
村里
that
面经
actually
常
they
也
have
是有从
mastered
上面
some
下
good
来要求，比如说
skills.
农村美化呀，什么美丽农村呀，有各种各样的这种
And we
论
can
证啊
teach
事
them
情。
how to
他们会
beautify
觉得
these
鸡窝猪
houses,
圈是
how
要
to
清
make
理
their
掉的，
houses more
就这
comfortable.
之间是有冲突的。所以我们的工作介入之后，使得他们当地的这种技能反而被重新唤醒了。那么另外一方面呢，他们模仿城里，
And we can
但是实
just
际上又不
weak
太
at
会。
their
实际上我们这
technique,
种
but they don't know
这种
how
大
to
学的
put
这种
things
或
in
者说这样的
place.
建筑师的介入，实际上是把一些可能这
So
些
when
做法
we
在城里都未必
architects or the
已经实
students
现啊，就
come
是
to
在城
these
里人看着也已
places,
经蛮有新意的这样的一种设计迭代
and
或
we
者技术
bring
迭代的
these
方法
new
引入之后，
ideas of
其实当做出来的时
technical
候，农
iteration
民
or
是有判
design
断，他不是没有
iteration.
判断的，
And
他
after
们
each project was
明白的其实
accomplished,
挺快的。
and these
这个
villages just
观念的这
understood
种
that,
交流，
oh,
我觉得
wow, so this
特
should
别有
be
意思，最
the
后大
way
家达到了
how
一种新
buildings
的一种结
are.
合，就是技
And
术迭代
we can
和
have this new
传统的智慧，
integration,
等于在一个新的
which is to
平台
integrate
和层次上去，
technology, and
非常有
by
力的结合在一
integrating
起，这是我
traditions.
们希望发生的，而且它也的确发生。
This is what we hope.
我再给他补充一个小例子来说明一下哈，就是这个
Another
村民以为的
example
那
I
个
would like to
好
add in,
和我们认为的那
you
个
know,
好之
the
间的
beauty
差
in
别在哪里？
villagers'
因
eyes
为
is
有
quite
一段时
different
间，我不知道现
from
在
that
是不
in
是还继
our
续了。就我们
eyes.
在做的时候，就是刚才王老师说，很多地方说在做美丽乡
When
村，
we
然后
started
呢
the
民
project, and many
漂亮
places
的
in
那个
China
石板
had this
路
project
你
called
敲
the
掉变成了
beautiful
水泥路，然
countryside.
后像我们
For
那个文
example,
村
they
碰到的
just
更有
got
意思，
away
它
of
本来那
this
个西岸两边
stone
做的特别好看，砌
roads,
的那
and
个
they
石
just
头，我们
paved
当
it
时去做调
concrete
研
or
的时候，
cement,
他们已
which
经用
was
大理
quite
石把它给覆盖掉了，因为他们认为城里人在做
they
大
thought
理石，
that
因为
that
这个
was
材料是美的，
modern,
所以我
and
们
then
在
they
做这
wanted
个。
to use
所以
this
后来我们就让他把不要
granite
再
or marbles. They thought this was beautiful. Later on, we let them know that the original stone from local areas is the most beautiful. However, it takes a lot of time and patience to explain to that. Their traditional materials are even better than those marbles or concrete.
谢谢两位老师。那么既然讲到城里啊，我就是挑最后一个这个问题啊。那个是这样，他是这样说
The last question.
如果就是现在感觉这个摩天大楼的这种形式是未来的这个城市的一个面貌，那么两位老
If
师是认为
skyscrapers
中国未
are
来
the
的城
look
市有
of
什
the
么
future
样的形态
city,
会朝
what
哪个
about
方向
the
发展？那么
the
其中呢，
look
特别
of
就是他想问的一件事
Chinese
情呢，是他觉
cities
得
in the
古
future?
代的话呢，这个传统城市其
In
实
the
跟农
ancient
村它感觉距离
time,
没有那么远。然后呢，但是呢，他又觉得
and
这个中
there's
国
not a
传统的
big
这个营
gap
造呢，似
between
乎又不可
cities
能承
and
受这
rural
个就是承载这
areas.
个庞大的这个人口。想听听两位老师是不是
However, China has this large population. We
先
need
说吧，
this
总
densely
结吧。
built buildings to absorb
这
this
样，
population.
因为
How do
这
you
些
look at
年
this
其实
issue?
我觉得我自己
For
还
all
是蛮
those
有体会
years,
的，因为我们差不多有20年
we have
的
learned
实
a
践，
lot
就是大
during this
概
past
就
20
看到了
years.
那个比较大规模的，从香山校园一直到最近的那个杭州国家版本馆的实现。
And China has
这
a lot
种
of
小的
projects
公镇到大的
concentrating
公
on
建。
how to
其实我们里面有
improve
一
and
条就
beautify
是
this countryside
关于
or
这个
rural
可持续
areas.
是特别重要的。
And
所
so
以为
we
什么
talk
我们
about
大
the
量的使用
sustainability.
夯土、抹泥，
And
但
we
是我
use
们比方说我们使用的
lots
夯
of
土可
rammed
能跟
earth.
传
We
统那
use
个是完全不
clays.
一样的，因为我们
However,
是
the
在
rammed
这个
earth we use
土
is
里面是
different
不加
from
任
the
何的添加剂的，这是
traditional
我们的
ones.
一个前提。所以所有的这些建起来的
We
这
don't
个
have
等
any
到你这个房子
additives
不用的时候，
in
它是
our
会回到
rammed
大地的。
earth.
这个是就是我
So
们
all
每
these
次都要花
houses
很多的
made
力
of
气
this
去
rammed
说服我们的
earth,
甲方，因为这会
once
让它
they
的实
are
践难度更大，
taken
而且它这个
taken
土都是
down,
新鲜
and
的，
this
又涉
rammed
及到
earth
很多的
can
防水
just
啊
go
什么的
back
问题，其实
to the earth
接收
in
起
a
来比
very
较困
natural
难。
way,
一
just
开
as
始的
it
时候，
was
人家都说你们
before.
这个走不出校园的，但是我觉得我们最后在版本馆实现的时候，是国家级的这种大型项目可
And
以实
people
现，
questioned
说
about
明
this
这个观
way.
念是一直
However,
可
people
变的。然后包括
understand
木材，它也是一个可持续的材料，虽然
or
可能
like
时间长
wood,
了，你要去
which is
更换
also
更替这种
sustainable.
传统的那个
Although you
木
need to
建筑，
replace
它实
old
际上
wood
都是
after
有一
some
个关于
time,
可持续的这个
but
理
they
念在
are
里面的。
all
所以我们在
sustainable
做这个
material.
东西的时候，王老师反正也是要求我们工作室所有的人，就是我刚才前面讲到
And
的啊，
this is the
自然的
requirements for
材
our
料，
projects.
真实的建造，这
Using
个我觉
natural
得是特别
materials,
重要的。
using
王老师，你补充吧。
the most natural
我
way
想
to
补充一点，
build.
就是其实我们很多事情啊，一定要看到这个表象背后啊，它的实质。
For
比
many
如说
things,
现在
we
中
must
国的城市
see
啊，
the
高楼
reason
大厦可能造的
behind
是全世界最多
the
的，
surface.
大量的这种高楼大厦建起来啊，现代的啊，但是很多人不了解的一点是，造了这么多的高楼大
And
厦，
many people
甚至
don't
里面有很多
understand
的高楼
that
大
those
厦都布满人啊，因
skyscrapers,
为
even though
房
they
市都
are
超
filled
过了
with
居住的
people,
人口，大概是这样一个状态。因为它变成了一种市场
and
的投资，
we
但翻
still
过来，
have
为中
more
国的城市做出巨大的
concrete
贡献的
buildings
农
than
民
what
户，
we
就从
need.
农村来的，他们实际
And
上
however,
是
let's take
买
a
不
look
起
at
这种
another
房价下
group,
的高楼大
which is
厦，
the migrant
这就出现了一
workers.
个悖论。
They cannot
另外一个，我们回头
afford
看一下中国
those
的农村，
skyscrapers
有
in
那
the
么多的这
city.
个农民挣了点钱都
And
不回
in
家，
the
一定要造一个房子，这也是
countryside,
中国的传统。所以中国有大量的
many
农民现在
farmers
新
earn
造的
very
这种
little,
房子，但这种房子
and they
一
still
年
want
除
to
了春
use
节
their
不到
limited
1个月的时
saving
间，
to build a
城
large
里务工
house
的农民回来，
back in their
其他的时间基本
hometown
上
in
都
the
是空的，
village.
只有少量的
And
老人
most
妇
of the
女
time,
留
those
守
houses are
在那个地方，
empty
所以
most
就
of the
变成
time
两
in
头
the
不好的
year.
状态。城市里大量的
So we
房子
see that's
空着，农民买
two
不起；
entities. One
乡村
entity
大
is
量
in
的
the
房子空
cities
着，农民
where
大
migrant
部
workers
分
cannot
时间
afford
是没时间住。
skyscrapers. And when
这
another
就是
entities
中
in
国
the
实际
villages,
上
they have this
发
own
生的一个现
say
象。我觉得总
houses
的一个
which
状
are
态，
not
我认为
occupied
是不可
during
持
most
续
of
的。
the time of the
一定
year.
要找
So
到一
this
个
model
解
is
决这
not
样的一种悖论，
sustainable.
这样的一个
We must
两
find a
难的
way
这样的一
to
个
tackle
状态的
this
一个出路。
problem.
我觉得中国的这个现代化啊，包括现
So
在
I
我觉
think
得
that
特别好的一个愿望啊，
in
现在提
terms
出
of
要走这
China's
个共同富
modernization,
裕的道路，就要
an
减
important principle is to achieve common prosperity. I think this is very good. And it's important for rural development. That's why we pay attention to rural areas into all the villages. And I think that in rural China, they live with the environment, and this is highly inspirational for future development. Apart from that, sometimes people would have a kind of misunderstanding when it comes to the so-called villages in, for example, the area south to the Yangtze River. If we take a look at the population, for example, they are really close to cities. They are not the strictly speaking rural areas or villages that we talk about. I would call them mini cities rather. So I think an important thing is to consider the definition of rural area. And that would cause a lot of problems, for example, the drainage of talent. And that's why we pour all our efforts into the rural areas, and this is what we have been doing. On the one hand, in rural areas, we help renovation, construction. On the other hand, we bring what we learn about sustainability, how to live with the environment into the construction of the cities. What we are doing in cities is a result of what we have learned in the rural areas. And that will bring us some new possibilities. So, for example, the future of villages could serve as the preparation for the future of cities. So I think that the cities and the rural areas are no longer at opposition. Thank you so much. Thank you, both professors. However, due to time constraints, I'm afraid we'll have to finish the first part. So, I think we'll have to quit the tea break section. So if you need, we have food prepared next room. In the next part, we also have some excellent architects and professors. So once again, thank you so much to Professor Wang and Lu. So why not let's take a quick break, just for 3 minutes probably, and then we'll come back immediately. Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's quickly move on to the next session. So after discussion with our colleagues, we do realize that we have a great number of colleagues for the US side, so that's why for the next round we'll switch to English. So for those audience on the line, if you prefer to listen to Chinese, you can change now the input language.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna shift to English for the second part of today's symposium. So let me introduce our first speaker, Ms. Professor Xu Tiantian. She is the founding principal of DNA Design and Architecture. She has received numerous awards, such as the Moira Janvale Prize for Emerging Architect in 2019, the 14th International Prize for Sustainable Architecture Gold Medal, the 2022 Swiss Architectural Award, and the 2023 Berlin Prize. And in 2020, she was appointed a honorary fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Professor Xu has engaged extensively in rural revitalization process in China. Her groundbreaking architectural acupuncture is a holistic approach to the social and economic revitalization of rural China, and has been selected by the UN Habitat as the case study of inspiring practice on urban-rural linkages. Professor Xu received her master's degree, Master of Architecture in Urban Design from Harvard GSD, and her bachelorate in architecture from Tsinghua University in Beijing. So let us first welcome Professor Xu to give us her presentation.
谢谢华莹的介绍 ，Thank you for the introduction。非常感谢刚才王老师和陆老师的演讲哈，非常的
I'd like
精
to
彩。
thank Professor Wang and Professor Lu for the keynote speeches, excellent sharing. So for our company, DNA, we have been working in rural areas for long. And we do feel that on the one hand, it needs disciplines. Apart from the technologies, it needs disciplines. And we have to have an in-depth understanding of the culture, of the tradition, and we have to consider the restraints of costs. So under such circumstances, how we can give full play to our role for construction, for renovation of the projects in rural areas. And as mentioned by Professor Lu, education matters. This is what rural areas are badly in need. I think what we would like to achieve in rural areas cannot be achieved by architects solely. We also need local government, local residents, local colleagues, and we need students, we need the professor, and that's why we also have students from Tsinghua University.
Led by Professor Matang and also Long Ying, 两位教授带着学生来。好，so speaking of rural, because of the urbanization process in past decades and also focus on cities and metropolitan area, rural has become almost forgotten land, and there's also increasing disparity between urban and rural development in China and also global-wise. But if you explore further, you will discover that there's still rich culture and history, tradition rooted, embedded in our rural context. So in this process, in our with our engagement in the past 9 years by now, we discovered that actually architecture could become a effective means with a sensitive approach. We call it for this pedagogy architectural acupuncture or minimal intervention. So that means that architecture is mapping into the original, the local, historical, cultural context and fabric, and at the same time also integrating with our local resource and heritage. So today I'm going to talk about 3 projects. These are non-conventional building projects, but the idea is to introduce that when you're working in the rural, as an architect, we also need to expand our vision to look into the alternative solutions, look into the local resource. In a way, this could also become kind of alternative architecture. And these projects are also shown at the with the exhibition at Cornell in Ithaca at the moment. So the first project is a bamboo theater, which is really a fun exercise for us. If you can see the spot, the bamboo forest. So with this village in Hong Kong, we were asked by the head of the village to construct something in with the local bamboo, because the village is surrounded by the bamboo forest in the region. So the bamboo is the abundant local resource in this context. And after investigating into the local type of bamboo moju in the mountain, and also the construction method, which if you work with the bamboo material, where you cut down the bamboo, you also need kind of a extensive procedure for the preparation of this bamboo, which means you could only use bamboo from from the fall term instead of the spring term. And so at a certain point, we realized that maybe we could just use the live bamboo in the mountain, and because this type of bamboo has really is very resilient to the tension and pressure. So Maozhu is it grows within a few months. It grows into the height of 12 to 50 meters. So and also instead of cutting down the bamboo and going through all these extensive treatment preparation phase and then construct on site, we worked together with the villages to actually take the bamboo, which has this very strong root system, almost like a foundation for a building. And we work together with the local villages to weave the live bamboo into a live structure in the nature. And this is probably the shortest phase of construction for us. It was done in less than 10 days. And this could also trace back to our ancient philosophy. This is painting by Qing from Ming Dynasty, solitary paradise, with the scholar at ease in this space by live bamboo. But here with this structure by Maozhu in the mountain, this create a open public space for the local villages and also the visitors as well. And here you can, this could be just a leisure space in the nature, or you could also reserve for the local Songyang Opera as a theater, bamboo theater. Next project is the renovation of an abandoned Shimen Bridge. This is the original Shimen Bridge, was built in the 70s, and then later on was eventually with a new bridge for vehicle built in the 90s. This original Shimen Bridge was eventually abandoned and become an unsafe structure. So there was constant discussion to demolish this bridge. And in year 2006, we proposed to preserve this bridge by adding a new wooden lounge on top of the existing bridge structures to create a pedestrian walkway for the two villages across the river. And in ancient time, if you can read the title of these two villages, Shimen and Shimen Yu villages. These two villages used to be one village. Yu means the farmland of Shimen. So that means that over 200 years ago, villagers, they went to their farmland across the river. So eventually built up their own houses and then become a new village across the river. So this new pedestrian walkway or this new Shimen Bridge become a new connection for these two villages and also shared as a common public space, which is also kind of a typology from our traditional lounge bridge, very popular typology in this region in between Zhejiang and Fujian province in the mountain area. And these lounge bridge are not only there for the transportation as an infrastructure, but also a meeting space, a public space, kind of an important a meeting point for the local community. So this new canopy by wood is actually constructed by a pre-engineered timber structure assembled on site, and this is as a pedestrian, as a walkway, but also could function as a market space or different events, festival programs. And at the same time, this walkway has also become the best viewing terrace for the adjacent water dam, which has over 1,000 years of history, water dam. And this new wooden lounge, this new Shimen Bridge, the wooden lounge follows the original bridge structural rhythm. And this new bridge becomes the symbol of these two villages reunited again. And the third project is the adaptive reuse of abandoned quarries in the neighbor Jingyin County. We have been working within this region for 9 years by now in Lishi City. So Songyang is one of the 9 counties, and Jingyin is right next to Songyang County. And unlike the topography with the Songgu Pingyuan, the valley, the flat valley in Songyang, actually Jingyin County is the topography is rather mountainous topography, and with the history of quarrying heritage or industry, which can trace back to Song Dynasty, which is over 1,000 years. And many of the quarries were closed down around over 2 decades ago because of the ecological interruption. And there are in total about 3,000 quarries abandoned in this region. You can tell from this landscape photography, all these small openings are the currently vacant and abandoned quarry space. That's the history, a bit of a history and culture of Jingyin County. This type of stone tuff by the volcano and also the calligraphy, history, culture, context, heritage. So we've been looking into this quarry as existing local resource or pre-existing space. And we propose to local government that to take the quarry, a design actually as a social strategy to revive all these abandoned cities. I'm going to show you a video of how these quarrying was actually done manually. So you can really see that these quarry workers used to spend days, months, years, really decades of their life in these quarry's business in this space, excavating manually and in a way created all these spectacular spaces. And most of the quarry workers are working in this business for decades, and almost every person, every people you found in Jingyin has a member, family member, or knows someone used to work in the quarry business.
大概最早的时候是70年代开始打的啊，70年代那个时候我们这里基本上都是打石头的，没有别的生活的，就是靠打石头过日子的啊。70年代、80年代、90年代，那30年代是全部都是搞石头的啊，别的没有事情做了。到90之后呢，有的就是不打石头了，别的是工作去了啊。所以以后呢，这个下面这个是要机械化了，要机器去了啊，不是人工打了。我就是讲这么句，我是16岁就打石头了，这个红家，那以前我们打石头是很苦了，早上6点钟就到这里了，到山上去了，到晚上6点钟，一天到晚，那个时候呢，饭都吃不饱，打石头是饭都吃不饱，一天的。
So Liu started to work in his quarry since when he was 60 years old, and he's so emotionally attached with all these quarry places. And during our construction, he volunteered to look after our construction process, and he was kind of a supervisor for our construction. So these are the leftover spaces in Jingyin County, and these are just very few of them, but there are over 3,000 quarries and closed down and without any additional intervention. So we proposed a design of quarry really as a social strategy. First of all, to engage with the safety reinforcement. And then to introduce new type of program function, really based on individual characteristic of the each quarry. So that becomes a 9 quarries as the first, as the cluster as the first stage or first phase to look into different types of quarry space, either an open quarry or covered or underground space. So each one is introduced with a new program based on its own quality. And the first quarry, we've realized 3 quarries in 2021. The first quarry, the program was defined by the request of all these local quarry workers to have a live stage for them to demonstrate their quarrying skill and quarry as a intangible cultural heritage, but also as a collective memory. And these quarry workers are really proud to show off their quarrying skill heritage. And they were really actually the skilled quarry workers were well respected by the local community. And the second space, quarry number 9, is converted into a performance space because of its acoustical quality that with its reverberation time of this space, that this could become a kind of a performance space. But first of all, we wanted to give the space. Well, our engagement is really, our intervention is rather minimal. Most of the treatment is on the ground level with this sunken space. First of all, we wanted to introduce another layer of memory that this quarry was used by local villagers as a fish pond at a certain point after the quarry was closed down. So this was actually we call it the most, maybe the first or the original initiative for adaptive reuse of these pre-existing space. So the layer of water is to address to this layer of memory. But the space can also become a performance space with sunken space as a central stage for the younger villagers who are into performing and dancing, performing, entertainment, or this could be used as a more conventional stage performance space for local traditional opera, 舞剧. And the last quarry is number 8, which is dedicated to the local cultural context and the calligraphy history context in the region. We call it the Book Mountain. It's a combination of library and Chinese study. But first of all, with the concrete safety reinforcement, actually, this is a concrete layer that with the texture, it's mostly happening at the opening, at the edge of the openings and also at the joints of different caves. And the texture is really resembling the texture of this quarrying stone surface. But it's also adding this reinforcement, is also adding a new kind of a texture and layer into the existing layers. So this is the final picture of this art design and intervention. But you could tell that it's not changing the geometry or topography of the existing quarry, but really introduce a thin layer of actually it's a timber. This is engineered bamboo panels with the steel structure framing. So this is like a soft membrane going into the space, really tracing all these existing walkways, terraces, and as an indication for public activities and movements, but at the same time also becoming a additional layer of prefabrication that making contrast with the existing, with this almost organic form of this manually carved space. The idea is that with this material also represents a new type of program, public program introduced into the space. At the same time, become a kind of indication of the movement of the circulation. So we took all the original topography as an inverted mountain. To address this, we call this as the Book Mountain. So the idea is that this walkway can really take you up to the all these terraces that was the original working station of quarrying workers. And then it becomes all these reading platforms for cultural activity for local community, local school children. And ultimately, we wanted to dedicate this space, all these spaces, as the monument to local quarry workers, as anonymous artist collective. And they have been spending almost their lifetime working in these quarries. And at the same time, these quarries are also their actually, the local communities are really proud of these quarries. And now these quarries are back to their life again. So that's it for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll have time for discussion, but there's a quick, brief question online. So the question is, how do you define architectural acupuncture?
Because of the limit of time today, I didn't get to introduce, the pedagogy with our other projects in Songyang County, but we have been working in Songyang since early 2014, and we have been working with over 20 projects, very small projects, even including the Bamboo Theater as one of the small ones in the region, in the entire region. And acupuncture means that we introduced a small scale of public space into each village according to the context and heritage and tradition, culture. And then, and these programs are really defined by the character of each different village. So there could be a cultural space, there could be a cultural museum or an ancestors hall, or and we also have a number of agricultural production workshops. For example, we have a brown sugar factory. We also have tofu factory in different villages. So this is, we call it acupuncture, very small of a public program, but really mapping with the whole region. So it becomes a circulation in the entire region, in the entire county. Acupuncture also means that the function of architecture is rather like practitioners, right? To diagnose and then to provide solution and remedy to certain symptoms, to revive the rural region. So we do acknowledge that there's issues. There are issues in the rural villages, in the rural area, and architecture at the same time could become like I said earlier, could become an effective means solution for such symptoms.
Thanks. Really like it. The sort of a functional, operational, symbolic metaphor of the practice. Yeah. So so what we will do is I'll invite the next speaker, and then after all our three speakers finish their presentation, we'll invite the panel back on the stage for a discussion. Thanks. So our next speaker, Song-Ye Hao, he's a tenured professor and director of the Institute of Architecture and Technology at Tsinghua University School of Architecture. Professor Song has focused on sustainable theory and design for over 20 years within the scope of architecture, urban studies, and building technology, while promoting the combination of modern design and vernacular architecture in China. He is among the leading academics in sustainable architecture in China and a key government consultant. He is also the deputy chief architect of THAD, co-founder and principal of SUP Atelier, director of Green Building Theory and Practice Group at the China Green Building Council, director of the architectural branch and vice chairman of the Active House Academic Committee at the Architectural Society of China, and a member of the Architectural Design Professional Committee of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development. Professor Song.
Okay. Thank you very much. I got only 20 minutes, so I just go directly to the topic. So we all understand the challenge, climatic change and carbon emission things, and different countries in different positions. And also another very related concept for sustainable research is embodied energy, which focus mainly on the performance of materials. The lower, the better, for sure. But if it could be reused or recycled, yes, we could, change another. So a lot more things. Traditional Chinese, we were living in harmony with nature, no matter, without any air conditioning and all this kind of stuff. Still, we could do something together with nature. And particularly this painting, traditional Chinese painting, it's snowing, it's kind of cold winter day, but still here in a pavilion, something like that, only covered without envelope, and fully enveloped not. So which means even it was very cold, still people could handle with that. And also we have bamboo resources. Yeah, just Tian mentioned the mozu, the mozu bamboo, yeah, particular species, one of the particular species in China and around the world. A lot more different species of bamboo and a lot more expression in the way of architectural design, and which forms the diversity, yeah, even with bamboo. So different countries, they have their own way to deal with, to handle with bamboo. But something common is the performance and the physics. And also the way to handle with them, the bundle with rope and then with bolts and all, even with the cutting-edge 3D printing materials. For dentists, in my office, we have a very short history with bamboo, but we have our own chronological sequence. From the very beginning, it's a very small public space for the village, just as Professor Wang Shu and Professor Lu mentioned, lack of the public space in common Chinese villages. So we got the chance in a very short period of time, very limited budget. So the first trying for us to do something with bamboo. And then second case, we challenge the extreme of bamboo, because doing something more with less, always kind of cliche or slogan for us. So we try to find some kind of structure system which might be suitable for bamboo, yeah, single bamboo system, yeah, to challenge the curve, make it a panometric or whatever. And the third case is another, it's for in the Fujian province, also a multifunctional place for villagers to do a lot more things. Last but not least, still we have another ongoing project in Hainan province, so we could make it 5 in this year. The very beginning, yeah, the village lounge of Shangcun. Original, it's something like that, just a private house for a single family. And in the 1980s, with migration, we got a particular Chinese term called migrant workers, so people from village to metropolitan for their living. And this family, they settled down in Hangzhou, so got a old place for the village. Looks like that, abandoned. It's not destroyed, it's just abandoned. Without maintenance for decades, for sure, this kind of thing. And we just have bamboo here. Because we got only 30 days of the committee of the village, they had kind of vision for or plan for the use of the place to make it to boom their tourists, for some space. But we got only 30 days because we have a very important Chinese festival called Mid-Noon Festival, and also with a national day. So 2 weeks together, a long vacation. So must be accomplished at that time. So bamboo, that's why we got the chance to have bamboo here. So from the original atmosphere, enclosed to open, private to public, and the heaviness to lightness. There is something original like this, and afterwards it's something public for the villagers, not only for tourists. So before that, it's a ruin. After that, it's kind of multi-functional space. As I say. And also, it's something new, but still in harmony with the surrounding. So I tried very best to do kind of traditional architectural research for the portion, for the materials, for the openness or whatever, to make it as nothing happens there. But we can say it's something new. Yeah, we do the research also because that's the first case for us to use bamboo. So we try to be humble, or to be, to try to make it much more better for the quality of construction. So we do it modular with one unit repeated 6 times. We could call it 6 umbrellas, but it's just a repetition. It's easy for workers to handle with, and it's easy for us to keep the quality for construction. So the bamboo workers doing something on site. And also we ask the villagers to be part of the labor, to work for themselves, to do something for themselves, because we have the experience. If we donate something to the village, after we leave that, it's very difficult to imagine what the villagers or the people, local people might be doing with the building. So we have a strategy here to ask the local people who have their own craftsmanship, like stonesmiths or blacksmiths or bricklayer or carpenter, all the people, just ask them to be part of the building. Yeah, on the other hand, they could be paid very well, much better than they doing something as farmer. So you can see the concrete was not poured so great like Japanese architect, but that's more than enough for the village to keep something traceable. Yeah, it's not in the metropolitan, not in Beijing or Shanghai, just in village. And also, of the villagers, they are the owner. They put money for that project, and by the villagers, the workers in green T-shirts, they are professional bamboo workers. Other people are local people, and also mention about the sociology research for this village. Yeah, it's quite true. A lot more elderly people still working for themselves. And also for the villagers, a lot more things. We got another experience for doing something in rural area in China is no matter the size, dimension, try to make it multifunctional. Yeah, could be for movie night, could be for a banquet, could be even for seminar. So that's the first. The second is not in rural area. It's just in the university. Yeah, not far away from here. But we are trying to challenge something. It's in Beijing. We got the chance to have some thinking on how the Chinese architects are doing bamboo. What's the difference between the Chinese architects and some ASEAN country architects in Vietnam or in Malaysia or Thailand? So we just try to make it the single bamboo structure system. It's not bonded for dozens of bamboo, but only one unit. We try to find the boundary, the spanning or the connection or whatever. So we got a chance. But that's not in rural areas. Still, we have the surrounding. We have our way of thinking and also supported with scientists and doing that. For children, for elderly, and for students and professors there. It's just a pavilion, just for fun. And this again, we're back to Fujian province. Yes, we can say the bioclimatic chat. Yeah, most of the time in a year it could be endurable. Yeah, it's not so harsh for the climatic conditions, and that's the location site of the project. We have another thing in mind. Could this really be something local? The materials and also the resources, they are very popular for something. Tea resource and the rammed earth, traditional Chinese building, residential buildings. Always, local people, they are not so much fond of this kind of thing, like the experts or tourists. For hundreds of years, they cannot bear it anymore with rammed earth dwelling. So we try to recollect everything to make it a loop. The timber, stones, and also abandoned stone plates, we try to make it something that happening for them to do their job again. So we have the circle, the loop, the life cycle material treatment, and craftsman also, just in the range. Yeah, that's the way of both the bamboo technique and also rammed earth technique. Yeah, that's the drawing, just a fantasy thing. And also a lot more detailed research. And also even the local people, local craftsmen, still we ask them to do something, follow the expertise of architects. For instance, the picture to the left, yes, they just make the stone like that way. So we ask them to rebuild the wall in the way of the right picture. And also, the only thing we added for the rammed earth wall is the timber break, because it's something multifunctional, which means posters or a lot more things could be added. But it's impossible to nail something on the rammed earth wall, so we just have embodied the timber break. And 2 villagers, 2 days for a piece of wall in a very traditional way. Yeah, they just do in their own. And also we have another resource, the Shouning watered timber braid, also hundreds of years, just nearby. We're encouraged to find the structure solution for this. That's a painting in Song Dynasty, almost 1,000 years ago. So that's something happened. Leonardo da Vinci in the year 15,000 or something. So we just do the comparison and try to make it something interesting. So watered timber or rainbow timber to rainbow bamboo system. And also something, the sequence here, the third project with bamboo, we still have something just in our minds to make something modular. So repetition again. Just a mirror. Looks very complicated. Actually, for the workers, they just do one thing twice. That's the joints. Very fast, rapid. The only enemy for us or for the workers to make this is the weather. Yeah, if in raining days, it's difficult for us to do anything. We have to protect bamboo, but other things very smooth. That's a test, the mock-up, one-to-one mock-up test. That's undergoing, and yeah, that's research that's on the way and something accomplished. And also users, yeah, a lot more, could be for banquet. They have the banquet in the village. And also could be tea market. It could be for movie night, could be for grocery, could be for tea house. Yeah, that's the first of the year in the village. And also we pay much attention to natural lighting and natural ventilation. Yeah, we can say that lighting, which are quite important for something sustainable. Why we use rammed earth wall? Just to block the extreme cold winter wind, and then to have the cooling summer breathe in. Then stone plates just be part of the terrazzo, yeah, just for the pavement, and also just do for the pavement of the bazaar. Yeah, that's something, and the timber for the benches. That's in the night, lighting also do not disturb the surrounding too much. And last February, heavy snow, so we got a picture from the villager. And also, because my time is almost on, so there's something sustainable, talking about materiality. Bamboo timber bricks are also very, with a much lower embodied energy. So we have this. But I just show some picture. We still try to create something. Yeah, that's something just in the minds of architects. And because not only the villages in South China lack of public space, villages in North China also lack of this kind of space. We try to have, that's in Henan province, we try to create something for the villagers to provide the possibility for them to have some kind of public ceremonies like wedding or whatever. Just something could be in the place. This time with break, we have our trying for the villagers. It's kind of 24 hours building, open, whether it's open or not. The villagers could be making full use of the building, the courtyard, the raised roof. And also we pay much attention to natural lighting and natural ventilation. And for the possible activities, behaviors, and of the villagers. That's for the villagers, library, or that's for some natural lighting and ventilation. Okay. So a lot more activities, just something undergoing. Local people, they are rich in craftsmanship. Yeah, you can see the quality of construction. But I want to say something of this case. After a long struggling, most architects do something with a label in some rural areas. Yeah, that's the question. So for this history museum, actually it's kind of restoration for an abandoned dwelling unit, very much popular in that region. They have kind of living spaces and up kind of storage. It's quite dark. So also, the scenery almost the same, no matter in Anhui or Zhejiang or Fujian. That's a site. Yeah, that's before the renovation, something like that. Yeah, you can see the interior. It just the upper floor. It's not just a kind of mezzanine, actually, for storage. It's quite dark. But something very interesting. You can see the stone and local materials again. Before that is something like this. We just call it second floor, but it's kind of mezzanine. Only something added to improve natural lighting and ventilation, and also just have one public entrance. Yeah, before that, something like this, and afterwards we add the roof window and caught something for ventilation and lighting, and for the villagers. It looks like nothing new here, but the principles for lighting and ventilation changed. That's maybe the devotion of expertise of architects on sustainability. Originally something like this. And gradually is something like that. You cannot even tell what's added if we do not say. It's just a part of the old village, but a lot more, performance enhanced. Lighting, ventilation, and function. Yeah, the first floor, just a museum. Upper floor, open for the villagers for meeting. And the public entrance. First floor could be, have kind of open time. And the second floor open for 24 hours a day. So no intervention. Yeah, the upper floor, the lighting changed. Yeah, a lot more things happened. But still, it's part of the village. If we do not say, you cannot say something new here. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Xiong, for sharing with us an intriguing and beautiful exploration of the materiality. And I think its creative work reflects a deep understanding of material cycles, and then also showed us a diverse sort of faces, diverse images of sustainable building. Thank you.
Thank you.
So hopefully after our third talk, we'll come back for a brief discussion. So let me introduce our third speaker of the panel, Song Gang. He's actually a Cornell alum. He's a graduate of Cornell University from the architecture school master's program. He's a co-founder of Atelier CNS, Shuliang She. Through his practice, Songgang has completed urban and rural renewal projects across China, including projects in historical districts, industrial renovations, and public and arts buildings. The work of Atelier CNS promotes the regeneration of old buildings and the use of traditional materials in a modern context to meet current user needs. With experience from exhibition and art planning to creative architecture design, Songgang is currently teaching at South China University of Technology and is a guest lecturer at architecture schools of Tsinghua University and Tongji University. Songgang.
非常荣幸能够参加这一次活动，前面的几位老师都是我特别尊敬的老师，然后今天也学习了特别多的一些那个知识啊，特别荣幸。So I'm going to talk about 3 projects. Basically, all our practice in parallel data, very local architects. I mean, from our perspective, the architecture should be based in certain land. So that's why we basically all our projects in Guangzhou and Shenzhen also in the peripheral region. So first one I'm going to show is called the White House Project. And this one, it was built 6 years ago, but right now it was abandoned for some reason. It's located in a very typical peripheral data village with very high density. And the village actually has very dense river network and a very developer-led industry. And the village has almost 800 years, and there's quite a diversity in the building forms. So you can see the different types of the buildings from an ancestral temple and the houses built by villagers themselves. So what types of building in the village? So most of the buildings actually abandoned because the villagers moved out to the urban area. But they rented out the old houses to the migrant workers. So a lot of migrant workers living in the village. Because the location is very close to the Guangzhou metropolitan area and not far from Shenzhen, so this very good location actually give quite a lot of opportunities for developing like the tourist industry. So the operation team came to the village and they decided to rent some houses and develop to the guest houses. Because all the house belongs to the village themselves, and it's really difficult for them to rent off them. So the operation team decided to rent some of them and scatter it among the villagers and finally transfer them into an open guest house cluster. So basically, you can see from the right image, and the whole project consists different groups. So the groups actually not connected to each other, but each group has a very unique feature, and we just found a certain feature of each group and transform to guest houses. Here's a couple of pictures showing different groups of the guest houses. We have guest houses along the river and represents the same symbiosis between the modern and the tradition. We also have a group actually built on the roof of top of the buildings, and you can see the connections between the shared open space on the roof and the public space actually in an ancestral temple. Actually, in parallel data, ancestral temple provides the only open spaces in the village, like many people talk about. Actually, in the village, there's a lack of the open spaces, but ancestral temple provides the open spaces for the village. And we can see old and new, and from the right image. And so basically, we define a new model of old and new, and we through the design of the several buildings scattered in the village, and finally we improve the quality of the whole village. So here's some pictures showing the material of different groups. we have concrete, we have bricks, and all these details and shadows showing our understanding about how to improving the quality of life in the village. So here I'm talking specifically about one group. This one actually built on the roof of several old buildings. We call it the City of the Sky. And actually, except in the ancestral temple, yes, it is, there's a lack of open spaces, but actually the roof provides the only open spaces for the village. So the villagers building a variety of simple sheds on the roof, and they give the definition of the roof with different function use, such as sun driving, planting, gathering, and leisure. So we trying to actually renovate the roof and trying to change it to a very open space for the village. So here's some images showing after the City of Sky, we call it City of Sky, complicated, and we can see from light view of the terrace on the roof, and we can also see the bridges on the rooftop. So here the diagrams show the rooftop, the City of Sky actually on 4 existing buildings. And through the renovation or redesign of the shades on the roof, and we introduced 4 boxes on the roof, and connecting all these 4 boxes, and we're creating a sort of sky castle surrounded by all the houses on the roof. And on the bottom, because there's very strict rules for the distribution of the land and property rights, so it's really difficult for the people, could use the space between the buildings. But after the operation team rented these 4 existing buildings, we decided to break walls among these 4 existing buildings and creating more open spaces for the village. So finally, we create a vertical 3-dimensional public space system, and consisting 4 existing buildings and 4 new boxes on the roof. And all these 8 boxes actually connected by bridges, corridor, and creating a system. And actually, this system born from the original old context of the village. And this space finally becoming a place for the people in the village, and also for the tourists. And a lot of people come here to, involve in a lot of activities. So you can see the activities can happening on the roof, and this concept, there's many other like gathering, barbecue on the roof. So the second one I'm talking about is a public toilet in Kaiping. It's a very small project. Kaiping is very famous for its clusters of residential towers, water towers. We will call it Diaolou, and it's world cultural heritage. And our site is very close to one of the world cultural heritage, Zili village. So this place is very special and unique. And our site was designed to be located at the original toilet site in the village. And we decided to reuse the materials from all the toilets and recycle it in this new construction. So our strategy is very simple, because the original toilet was at the front of the village, and because people use it to hang out and rest. So we kept the frame of original toilet and built a big stair slope to make a part of a public space, because it lacks public space. We reused the materials pulled out from the original toilet, and also connected many materials from the village, and created 2 courtyards and surrounded and protected all the trees next to the toilet. So after this strategy, the toilets become part of the public space, and the public space and toilets are integrated together. And we use the iron cage to build a wall. And this wall actually make Korea and the older trees in Korea. And the large stairs that provide villagers with daily leisure and entertainment. The whole building structure is very simple. And in terms of the form, we choose to create a slope, as I mentioned, and hiding the function use the toilet below the large stairs. And the people can use the up space as a daily use. So because the large stairs can host many activities, and so you can see the plan actually is very simple, and the public life is happening on top of it. So in the construction, we involving many local craftsmen and village volunteers in this process. As I mentioned, we reuse some materials from the old toilet. We also connect a lot of other materials from village. We attempt to create a new modular and order, reusing the old bricks and tiles that had lost their modular after being poured down, so that no materials can be able to recycled. So here the diagram shows actually we create the cage and put the materials tiles inside of cage. So finally, the cage with materials becoming a class of the history of the village. So the uniform modulars made from the steel wire cage and created several walls of the toilet. And the whole construction process of the wall following the gravity law. So actually the upper ones with very large holes, but the bottom one with little holes. And the steps and also made from stone chessboards and many materials actually from the villagers' daily life. So the whole construction follows the gravity law, as I mentioned. So a lot of hole spaces or tension left in the masonry method to make the wall appear more transparent. So you can see in the different shading, sunlighting through the cracks of the wall. So it is not just the toilet. We hope it can become the window and the history of the village. So finally, after this finished, and this one gives the local village a lot of sense of belonging to the place, and also it will also become a tourist spot. It's very interesting because people come here to do sketch about the toilet. So the toilet is not just the infrastructure, also becoming a very important development of the village. Also attracting a lot of young people from the city to the village. The third one I'm going to talk about is bamboo. The Professor Song Ye-hao, they present a lot of beautiful bamboo structures. So our bamboo structure compared to his a little bit simple. Starting from 2019, we started to use bamboo to create several installations in the village, and the understanding of the bamboo actually developed by several projects. At the first beginning, we just use bamboo as a very simple material to use it. But when the second one, we are thinking about how to integrate the structure and material together. And the third one and the fourth one, we call it the 30+. Actually, we integrate the cladding in part of the structure. And so that's this development of the whole structure. And we finally getting more understanding about this kind of material. So first one is in Chanqi, and this one is in a very largest and the best preserved Asian village of Peripheral data. And this one is trying to provide a shading and the landmark for an old basketball court. So we take advantage of the toughness of bamboo combined with traditional bamboo weaving technique. We're just using the weaving technique to highlight the beauty of the craftsmanship. And the construction also is simple. We just use a two-dimensional curve to create three-dimensional overhanging structure. And a lot of local craftsmen and volunteers from university take part of this construction process. You need to burn the bamboo to curve it. So finally, you can see actually the handmade and the trace of handwork is very quite obvious after finish it. So this one, the structure is one-sided hanging, and the diameter of the hanging is 7 meters. So this is the diagram shows the different components of the structure. After its completion, and it attracted many local villagers and the elderly and the children, and to be a very open space for the villager. The second one I'm going to talk about is another village, and this one is along the riverside. This one actually is very, the site is interesting because the government spent a lot of money to build the park for the village, but actually the park is certainly used by the villagers because it lacks shading and a space for people, for the villagers to rest. So we are thinking to create a corridor, helping provide a shade place for residents. This one is a continuation of the first one. And the first one is one side the overhanging system, and this one actually is a two-sided overhanging system. So we optimize the structure, and we use a band of the bamboo as the column. And finally, after the optimization of the structure, the maximum overhanging the diameter of the umbrella is almost 10 meters. So the construction also following the first one, and we use the two-dimension curve fitting to create a three-dimensional surface. So also it becomes a very important public space in the village. The third one actually includes two pavilions. This is also development of the first two one. And it is in a park, not really in the village, but very close to the village. And in this one, we develop a basic component or prototype, a shell-like basic shape. So in the first one, actually, we the Chanqi one actually that's the replication of the 4 shells. But in the second one, the Huanglong one, actually we have 5 different shells, but in 2 directions. But in this project, actually we create more complex geometry and create more possibility of the space. So this diagram shows the geometry. So the basic components of the geometry comes from the basic prototype shell, but the space are quite sophisticated. And this one, and in these 2 practice, actually we explore more deeper on the structure, and we introduce the palm skin as part of the structure. The palm skin maybe, for us, is really a big breakthrough for the structure. And palm skin was used for the raincoat in the countryside. But currently, because of the modern raincoats, the pumpkin was not widely used in the village. So we use the pumpkin and combines the bamboo weaving and bamboo wood and finally become an integrated structure. And we also use the palm rope as a bonding material. And we prefabricate the pumpkin in a factory, or maybe in another village I'm talking about later. And the modular unit is 1 meter times 1 meter. The pumpkin actually was used in peripheral data, but currently we could not find it in the region. So finally we go into another province, Hubei province, to find it because the contract coming from another province. So because of this project, a lot of villagers from his homeland involved into the construction process. This is after it's built. So this is the first one. We call it the flower pavilion, and it looks like a flower. So flower, as I talked about before, is a combination of different shells, but with different scale. So the shells combining together and creating a complex space and providing a variety of spatial experience. A second one, we call it Embrace Pavilion. Embrace Pavilion was composed of 2 groups of shell geometry connected end by end and from a closed loop. The 3-dimensional 2-way curved surface was expanded on the structure to achieve offspan 12 meters. So from first one, it's 7 meters. For the second one, almost 10 meters. For this one, we can go 12 meters. So that's the improvement. Through the change of scale of shell, a large scale stage space was created, and a small scale waterfront viewing space produced a dramatic spatial twist at the transition between these two. So this is final image. A lot of people gathering, and but very sadly, it was burnt 2 months ago. Thank you.
Now we'll invite the panelists back to the stage front. We'll have a brief discussion. Leslie, I think you already have questions you want to ask, right?
Yes. Thank you, Yang. Hello, and thank you, Tian, Song-Ye Hao, and Song Gang for your wonderful 3 presentations and tying also the series of work that you do to the theme of this panel. And so I have 2 related questions. And I think one is, and that's especially evident in the case for Tian and also Song-Ye Hao, is, working from the site, right? And the sort of deep engagement with the local communities and builders. And I wonder, how do you start with the context? Because it's the projects are very much rooted in the sort of location, right? And in this case, the quarry that is the site. And I'm sure with the series of acupuncturist projects, they are all sort of derived from the context that they're set in. So I wonder, what is your first step, for the speakers? How do you contextualize your work in the design process? And in relation to that, then how is it, let's say after the contextualization, how is it important to bring in outside experts or technologies when working with the local communities and builders?
I start first? Like I said earlier, I think architects are also practitioners, like doctors. So working in rural, we always started with a research process, investigation in the beginning. That means that you go to site and talk to the people, to the local villagers, the community, and also we had many meetings with the community and also local authorities, and we also had received institutional support in that sense to receive all the to collect all the information on local culture, history, local resource. And most important is the intention of the local community, what they like, what they don't like, in a very simple way. So that becomes the initiative of our engagement, to set up the program and also to choose, actually also to choose for the buildable site locations together with the community. So like I said, it's a collective collaboration to engage all different sectors, and it's a process of investigation, but also diagnose to find the, based on the symptoms, and also later on to find the solution. So I think it's also a good training for architects to step out of our professional, kind of a working boundary, right? And you also engage in the earlier phase, the beginning phase of setting up the program, setting up a building, a buildable site, a building, a public building. But also I think it's a process that, as an architect, as a designer, you engage in this decision-making process that also brings inspiration of your design later on, of your physical design. So it's already a kind of a starting point that you look for the site. You probably already have some spatial idea in your mind. And so in a way, I think it's a expanding of our working, the definition of our working loads, right? But also it's a good training. It's a challenge, but also a good training for professional architects. In a way, I think it's actually getting into more, I always think it's more anthropological dimension or perspective. Thank you.
Firstly, we have very good relationship with local organization, the committee. Yeah, even in the village, there are kind of committee there on behalf of the villagers. So we have very good relationship with them, and we talked a lot to understand their vision. Yeah, the people inside of the committee, they also have kind of vision. So could we just embody into theirs, and what's the demands, and also kind of investigation, as Tintin mentioned, to talk with the villagers and to understand something, because anyway, the village is not so huge, only 100 people, yeah, maximum. So it could be done for the first-hand investigation. And secondly, we also have kind of support from other university. Yeah, for instance, of the Shangcun project, we have some support from the Peking University, sociology. Yeah, they have done a lot more jobs there. Yeah, to do the social statistic and also the income outcome and a lot more other things. So actually, they are the pioneers who talked with the villagers one by one, all this kind of, yeah. So we just on their shoulders. So it's easier for us to communicate something even very much professional. And thirdly, we from the point of view of architecture is something special. Not all the villagers understand what architects might be doing and what's doing that for. So we have to keep that and try to understand what the villagers are capable of. For instance, the bamboo job, mainly by professional bamboo workers, who are also villagers, just from another village far away. But talking about the recollecting of all the abandoned things, yeah, they could do that. Even elderly, they could do that. And also, later on, they have a lot more, the carpenters, yeah, very good in craftsmanship. So we just do something together. Yeah, thank you.
I don't have any ideas about this question. Maybe next one.
So Hanshi has a question too. Go ahead.
All right. Oh, hi. Can you hear me? So first of all, thank you all so much for the incredibly interesting lectures. I was really fascinated to hear that, first of all, how much care and research went into the design before you even started designing, in terms of researching the local cultures, communities, construction methods, but also how much the local craftsmen are involved in your construction processes. And there's a kind of dialogue that in all your research and projects with the local craftsmen, the local people, and as you just mentioned. So I was wondering, how receptive do you think the rural China, let's say as a whole entity, but also in this particular context that you guys are working in, how receptive do you think the local people are to take ownership of the innovations in construction techniques that you guys are creating and take it forward and have that change the way that they build in the future? Or do you think the role of architect versus inhabitants are still very much separate, and it is the architect who always brings in the new innovation in terms of design?
Okay. So from my practice, I noticed that there's really a gap between the local villagers and the outside expertise. For instance, we architects coming from the urban area, we come to the village. Actually, we introduce a lot of new ideas, and even some techniques, actually, like the concrete techniques, not widely used in the practice. Our practice in the region of our practice. So in the first projects I presented, and after we finished the concrete project, many villagers start to use concrete as an exterior facade of the building. It's really, really surprising for us. So maybe the villagers starting learn something from the outsiders. But on the other hand, even though we have done quite a lot of projects in the village, but it's really still difficult for us to change some of the ideas. For example, they prefer the buildings actually, because of their feng shui theory, they prefer the houses facing to the southeast direction, and we couldn't accept any house facing other directions. So from my point of view, and from we architects as outsider, maybe we can give them some inspiration of local villagers, and we're also learning a lot from the local residents, and like ones who they did a lot of experiments to introduce the local visitors to the city. And but on the other hand, on the other hand, yes, the local villagers, they do then a lot from our as outsider, but then they could not accept all of our ideas, concepts coming from city. They only accept what the one accept. Yeah.
I think if you engage the local community from the very beginning of the whole process, it's not a very kind of a it's actually easier. It's also strategic, so that the process becomes in a way much more efficient. But that takes a lot of communications in the beginning, right? And I think it also shapes your design ideas as well. So I would say that the design, the decision making, all these are actually in a way the co-authorship, and that's really what's happening in rural. I think it's really among everybody's work. It's always a kind of a collaboration and co-authorship. Thank you.
Is there any questions in the audience? Otherwise, because we're already over time, I'll ask the last question, which is actually follow up on Hanxi's question. So, besides the sort of the micro level, the project level, there's a lot of effort for stakeholder engagement and the integration of local craftsmanship with sort of a new technology. So if we sort of take a step back, looking at a larger scale, including the culture, social aspects. So do you see that design, or how design or architects' work can help to change the position of the urban fringe or rural within contemporary China? So a lot of the places, not all villages, but villages face some of the challenges, like young people leaving, right? That's why we use the word revitalization, as if like it's going in a certain direction, right? So how do you see sort of the design work or this collective effort by architects? And then also, it's not just design work by itself, right? New space, but the whole process. Do you see it sort of creating some opportunities for urban fringe and rural in China?
Sure, go first. And I think working in rural is not just to taking the rural as the counterpart of urban. The idea is to really on one hand, is to restore the rural identity. So there's a tradition, there's a heritage, there's really like so much of potential possibilities in rural region, but just really valuable also to our urban, to our cities as well. At the same time, I think it's restoring the identity of rural area also becomes the incentive to restore the circulation between urban and rural. And, with our current challenge and issues happening in the metropolitan area and the pandemic, many people do prefer to run away from the cities, and well, not forever, but at least there will be kind of opportunity to live in both situation, in both cities and villages. So the rural does provide a new type of living mode for urban residents. And not only that, I think it's also the in China with the rural revitalization policy by central government, there's a new opportunity for the younger generation, younger villagers to see, who used to live in the cities for better employment. And now with the knowledge and experience in the city, they can return home and really become the bridge between urban and rural by setting up new startups, rural tourism, ecological, agricultural, different type of new businesses.
Yeah, personally, I cherish very much what's still happening in rural areas. For instance, all the metropolitans, we got almost the same air conditioning or automobile equipment or technologies. But in rural areas, we could find something, genuine. So from my point of view, I always, I'm always glad to have my doctor candidates or research team to do a lot more investigation in rural areas. Not only the sociological thing, the interview or questionnaire, but also do something solid. I would use the word solid. For instance, to do some measurement of the performance of the buildings. What's the interrelationship between the interior air conditions or temperature with outside. So we do something. Why we just put the basic investigation in rural area instead of in the cities? Because we could not find something, through primary thing, something happened in city, in urban context, always modified in this or that kind of way. But in rural areas, we could find something, they are not disturbed. And also, during our course of doing something in rural areas, I do find potential connection with professional design, with local craftsmanship. For instance, the carpenters, they might be very good at carving something, to make something very interesting, but to the scale of architecture, just at the very beginning stage of that. So we could do something together. Okay, thank you.
Maybe I will talk about this in another perspective. Most of my practice is in imperial data, and actually we haven't done any project in a truly rural area. Most of our projects actually in a so-called rural area, but actually we has a very dense, very high density, and that's because the rural-urban separation here what comes from the dual rural-urban land system. So that's why some of the lands cannot be part of the politically metropolitan area. So that's why I'm glad I'm joining this event because the projects actually was built on a so-called rural area. So in this area, actually, we could not learning from the local traditional techniques of craftsmanship, because most of the local traditional techniques actually vanished or abandoned by the villagers. So for my practice, I'm more focusing on how to recreate the rural feeling in those villages. For example, like introducing the bamboo structures into the villages. So that makes the government very happy, because finally the villagers have certain feeling of a villager. Otherwise, the village looks very boring and just a part of the city, and we call it like an urban villager, and it's not exactly the true villager. So maybe for a long term, and most of the villages adjacent to the city were becoming part of the metropolitan area, and the shape, the form of the building and the village will be becoming, and you cannot distinguish between urban and rural area. So now there's a widely discussing initiative in Shenzhen. We are talking about how to renovate the urban village in Shenzhen, and there have many architects and governments, the officials, and they have different opinions regarding how to renovate the so-called urban villages in Shenzhen. And then the same situation also happening in Guangzhou and some other cities in the peripheral data.
Thank you very much. I think it's very encouraging in talking about identity, authenticity, and also seems like a more direct link between space and emotion, or the necessity for the connect to nature, and in a more diverse ways, make it possible for the rural area to get out of this sort of a vague background kind of image as a as a labor, food, material reservoir for supporting cities, right? So, and I'm really looking forward to see more work by you and your students. And I'll actually hand it back to Leslie to make closing remarks. Leslie?
Thank you, Yang, and thank you again to Song Gang, Sheng Yuehao, and Xu Tiantian, and also Lu Wenyu 老师 还有王老师 joining us today, and we're really excited that we could make this event happen in person and actually have this bridge and engagement during multiple years of non-zero travel in a way. And so it's also very exciting for us here to actually connect and hear and listen to your work that is happening in the Chinese rural urban landscape. And so, and thank you so much, Yang, and the China Center for co-hosting this event today. And we are running quite over time, so I would just wrap it up and to remind everyone that we have our second day tomorrow in Ithaca at Milstein Auditorium. It is in person and also available through a webinar format. So please tune in if you want to follow on 2 more panels tomorrow. And so thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a good day. Bye-bye. And good night to everyone here.
好，那我们就感觉这个话题还可以继续，肚子虽然已经饿了，但是还可以继续。我们以后寻找机会再做那个探讨。感谢，也感谢大家来参加，谢谢。